Hopefully mine will too. This regular meeting of the Judson Board of Trustees is hereby called to order at 6:00 p.m. I'm very pleased that you've taken the time to join us this evening. As the Judson Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals and policies and oversee the management of the district. We are responsible for approving budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and to listen to reports from the superintendent. We are not here to make administrative or management decisions pertaining to the daily operations of the district. This is the responsibility of the superintendent. In compliance with the State Government Code on Open Meetings, tonight's agenda has been appropriately posted. Excuse me. This is a meeting in public, not a meeting of the public. As our guests, you're welcome to observe and learn. These proceedings are being video and audio recorded and will become part of Judson's permanent legal record. In order that the tape adequately reflects these proceedings, please silence any mobile devices and refrain from talking while others are speaking. Since it is legally mandated that these proceedings are recorded accurately, I may have to ask for order periodically should I notice that disruptions are interfering with our recording capabilities. Once again, I extend to each of you a sincere welcome from the entire school board. Thank you for your interest in Judson ISD. We have established a quorum, and we will call roll. And if you'll go ahead and mark your presence. All right, we do have a quorum present. Thank you so much. Dr. Fields, the invocation and the pledge, please.
Yes, ma'am. If we could all please stand, Mr. Brooks.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we gather today in your presence, seeking your guidance and wisdom as we come together to discuss the future of our students, staff, and community. As we prepare for a new academic year, bless this meeting with unity, understanding, and a shared vision for excellence in education. We ask for your protection and blessings upon our district, that it may be a place of learning, growth, and inspiration for all. May our communication be clear and respectful. May we listen attentively and openly. May our decisions be thoughtful and compassionate. May our plans be fruitful and our hearts be ready to welcome back our students with open arms. May our actions reflect your love and grace, and may we always strive to do what is right and just. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Do we have recognitions?
No.
We do not have any recognitions tonight, so we'll move on to acknowledgement of visitors and citizens to be heard. The next item on our agenda is the public comment period. This is the time for citizens, staff, or students to provide their comments to the board on items that are not on tonight's agenda for consideration. A meeting that is open to the public under the Act is one that the public is entitled to attend. However, that Act does not give the public a right to speak at such public meetings except through the proper channels. As a courtesy to the public, the Judson Independent School District Board of Trustees allows time for public comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda for consideration. Other than the public address portion of the meeting, statements and questions from the audience will not be permitted during other portions of the meeting. So please sign up for public comment if you have comments to present on items that are not on tonight's agenda for consideration. During the public comment portion of the meeting, each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to complete his or her comments. As the presiding officer, I will strictly enforce that time limit. Profanity, yelling, inappropriate, uncivil, or discriminatory comments will not be permitted. So we have one person who has completed a form, Tricia Yamagata, and the topic to be discussed is cross-country. Please come up to the podium.
Good morning, or good afternoon, thank you for having me. I wanted to bring up the topic cross-country because it's not separated from track and field. When I say that, when it comes to the budget, we get $2,000 for both teams. If you look at track and field, they need all the equipment in order to keep them moving, and they have a lot more students on the team, and they have to get uniforms frequently there. Cross country has not received any uniforms for the past 4 years. The team went from 1 girl on the team to 16 last year, I believe it is. And then this year, 60% of the girls are going to end up leaving, and they are unable to recruit because they have nothing to show for themselves. So when they go to cross-country meets, they're wearing track and field stuff. So nobody's recognizing who they are. Cross-country is completely different from track and field. If you know anything about cross-country, they do long distance. Every day, these girls get up at 6 in the morning, run 5 to 6 miles, go out and they go and bust their butts in order to get what they need to get done. And then on race day, they wake up I usually have my daughter out the door at 4 o'clock in the morning to get her at the meet by 6, 7 o'clock. And then they're there till like noon, and their races are 3.1 miles. And then they come back and they don't have anything to even show besides track and field. Their backpacks that we wear right now to the meets are pink and Wagner is red. And they say track and field across it, and it was their old equipment that the old coaches several years ago bought for track and field. The biggest thing is these girls want to feel special. They want to go out and be proud of what they're doing, let everybody know who they are, and they want to recruit more. Right now, this year alone, they have already started this season. They were able to recruit 1 person so far, and that's a girl's sister that's on the team. So that's the biggest thing. And then my daughter has wanted me to mention this. She's all like, we don't ever take cheerleading and dance and combine them. Why are we doing it with track and field and cross country? We're our own identities. She just wanted you all to be aware of that because some people don't realize it's different. But yeah, right now the budget is set to $2,000. I did find that out between all 3 schools. It's $2,000 for both sports. And none of the teams have anything to show they are cross-country. So everybody within this district wears track and field and does that. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous, so.
No, we appreciate you coming forward. Thank you.
But that's all. Did you want it? Okay. Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so next we're moving on to the superintendent report. Construction update, please.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Brooks, if you would like to go over a few areas concerning the construction report, I know it was placed in the board agenda.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Board. As you know, we have, Siri, am I talking? As you know, we have several projects going. I wanted to make, and all of them are going along pretty well. Wanted to make mention of the playgrounds. I know, Ms. Ryan, that's one of your projects. We are in the process right now of evaluating bids and should be bringing something next month as far as a recommendation towards contractors for those. What I would like to bring to your attention, however, is some of our unexpected expenses on the construction report. We're going to be keeping a running tally of the unexpected expenses, and as of right now, we are at $182,098.47 due to the Spring Meadows temporary chillers and the Millers Point temporary chillers. And we have paid for those out of budget, but however, we will be bringing, at some point this year, we will be bringing a budget amendment for these items. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that you'll see a continuous running total of that so that, you know, we avoid springing it on you at the end of the year or the end of the budget cycle. So with that, if you have any questions about the construction report.
Are there any questions? Oh, let me move this. Okay. Yes, it's official that way. I'm sorry. Ms. Ryan.
Sorry, it's kind of a short agenda today, so I would like to go through a couple of these things in detail, and just because school's starting and people are coming back on campuses, so what's going on in a lot of these buildings is going to become real interesting, and making sure everything's done when everybody comes back on campus now. So in terms of Copperfield, you were working on that mid-June. Is that completed now, or going to be completed in the next week before the teachers come back?
Yes, ma'am. The main power is on. The principal is back on the campus.
Okay.
Over at Copperfield. The only issue we have right now at Copperfield, which is not really an issue, is there's a door for child nutrition that they're working on. It's blocked right now, and so they're working to get that taken care of. But other than that,
Okay,
everything
but
is. But there won't be any kind of
The
interruption.
transformer's been swapped out and
Yes,
all the
ma'am.
power's back on, so that one's pretty much done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. How about Candlewood, kind of both of their projects? The chiller obviously being my biggest concern, because air conditioning is always a huge topic this time of the year. I believe you said that's all done, so the chiller is in,
The chiller
it's
is
running.
in. It's running.
And everything's cooled out, because I know when I get back from a week of vacation, my house is like all musty because the air conditioning hasn't been running for a week, so we've had the AC running in there, and
They are
everything
currently
looks okay, even though it didn't have AC all summer?
doing that right now. Yes.
Okay, all right, because they come back on, are they moving back in there on Monday also? Like some
No,
of the
ma'am.
other-
We don't have the certificate of occupancy yet from the fire marshals, and so we're waiting
Okay.
on them to schedule that so that we can get the principal and their people back in there as soon as possible.
Okay, do we think that'll be, when do teachers come back? 29th
The
or the
5th,
week after?
5th, August.
Oh, not till the 5th? Okay, we think we're gonna have that done before they have
We
to
sh-
come
yes,
back
ma'am,
and
we
work in
should-
their rooms?
We should be okay.
We're still assessing the campus as well, having had no AC for quite a long time, so.
Okay.
We'll get back with you.
Okay, good. Because I know there was a lot of moving around of, crews amongst many of our schools and getting people back in. I know it was going to be heroic efforts once they could get back in to
Yes,
get Copperfield back cleaned, and Candlewood, and a number of the other schools.
Yeah, we plan to have a custodial surge once,
Once
we'll
it's-
have crews moving from one campus to go help another campus,
Okay.
and we'll make sure that everybody's up and running.
Awesome. Question on roofing, because we're almost done with Phase 4. Now, looks like the last of them are going to get done. What about Phase 5, which there are, I believe, 5 buildings as part of the 2022 bond? Now that we're finishing out Phase 4, are we looking to start thinking about design services for Phase 5 then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Before a leak, because I know, like, this building, and your building, and, like, we don't need mold growing, in the headquarters either, although it looks like most of the schools are done except one. Same kind of question with the vestibules. Is Metzger, you're doing a door at the end of July. Now, we have 5 more schools that were due for vestibules in the 2022 bond. Have we started assessing how to work on those? Do you need the 5? I can tell you the 5. Kitty Hawk, Woodlake Hills, Jecca, Judson High School, and Wagner were the 5 that were supposed to get vegetables as part of the 2022 bond.
Correct. Currently, we're working Metzger. That's the one that's
Okay.
under construction
So
right
we
now.
have not.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am. We have not. I mean, it was hard to shotgun and do all of those projects.
Correct.
For 2022 at one time, but we started with Metzger, and then we'll start moving forward with designs and which ones we'll come back for. I would tell you that of the areas that you're talking about, like a Wagner or a Kitty Hawk, those are pretty big areas to try
Yeah.
and set up a vessel, because those schools weren't built for.
exactly.
So,
They're
it's-
also some of the highest traffic, though, is also the
Yes, ma'am.
problem, too, is that you only have so many people in and out of an elementary, but you've
Correct.
got a lot of people in and out of a front door of a high school, too. So security-wise, would be nice to have a vestibule. And I guess where I'm going on a couple of these other things is, we're making a lot of great progress, right? Tons, between all the work we've taken on internally, and then we've contracted out to have somebody manage a number of our projects. Is it time to start looking at maybe Phase 2 of a farming out of projects? Because there's a lot of stuff still left on 2022, and a lot of them are the itty-bitty projects, like the HVAC controls in 19 of our schools, right? That's that's a lot of running around for our internal people to do, right? That's why we did the gym HVACs and the fencing, and sent that out to a company that could manage that for us. Is it time to start thinking about maybe farming some of these other projects out and letting, whether that's our current bond construction manager or another company, whatever works?
I'd say we're not there yet.
Okay.
Even though it's called Bond 2022, we didn't sell the bonds until '23, correct, you guys?
That's correct.
And then typically you have 5 years from that time in which to complete a bond. We've been working really diligently
Yep.
on getting a bunch of stuff done.
Oh, yeah.
If we find ourselves in a situation where we're hesitant to contract out because you give we went through this last time.
Yep.
You give a percentage of the bond away to the people who manage it when
Yes.
you do that. If we find ourselves in a situation where we're not making progress or we're not being able to get to it, then we'll probably come back to the board. But as for now, we feel comfortable with being able to take it.
Yeah, because I've been watching, I check mark off all the little prices as we do contracts and tracking that 345 million, and we're coming in under budget. Like it feels like they potentially have paid for themselves already, type things, because we have seen the cost savings that we were promised that they would try and get us, doing some of these
I'd
projects.
say we're coming in under budget in the areas that our facilities team is going for. In the areas that we've contracted out, we're spending what we had planned to spend for those projects under the bond. I wouldn't say
That we
that the
haven't saved any.
contractors have come in and saved us money. I'd say that they're spending the amount that they were supposed to
Okay,
get
'cause,
that
yeah,
done.
like
They're not
fencing-
going over.
Like fencing came in way under what we had budgeted for those, whatever's in this agenda packet, for those. That's well under
And that's
what
on there.
those schools were supposed to be, because I'm looking at this from a cost savings standpoint also, which is 19 campuses that need HVAC controls. That's an energy management issue, right? That's the ability to save electricity by being able to control the temperatures at the right times and things being, it's like installing your little Nest thermostat at your house type concept where you can turn it on and off. And, with CPS bills going up higher and higher, we've got 7 boilers and 2 chillers that were also on the 2022 bond. We haven't started yet. And as we're watching catastrophic failures of some of these systems and we're having to rent, if we have the ability to get some of these things done that will have a cost saving other than the project, and so that things don't fail, I guess is kind of why some of these projects seem important, because we could save money, start saving money now by getting some of these projects done a little bit quicker.
I
'Cause we
would
do
say-
have the money.
I would say we have the money. All of the projects that we put on the 22 bond, we felt like were major projects that need to be done, and that's why we put them on. But in getting construction work done in a district, it's kind of a dance.
Yeah.
And you can't work on everything at one time. So we have to orchestrate, we can do it here, but we can't do it over here at
Yeah.
the same time. So it's that dance that we have to do.
Well, and it feels like the design phase is taking, like some of these on here, well, we're 3-4 months into a design phase. So like, at what point do you pull the trigger so that you're giving the engineers or the architects their 4 to 6 months? It seems like July is when we start thinking about next summer's projects, right? Because we got to have the designers working on all of those designs, get them bid out, so that next summer, maybe we can get some of these projects done. Like even interior lighting, we're supposed to be upgrading to LED, and all these cost-saving lighting fixtures inside our campuses was on there too. So again, more cost savings, but that's going to take someone a bunch of time to design it, right? We're going to have to find an architecture firm that does specifically lighting design, and then come up with all those schematics. So, and I just don't know, we have a limited number of project managers, right? And so when you're talking about things on 10, 15, or 20 campuses, like that's a lot of driving around in an 8-hour day. So that's why I'm concerned that it's real easy to manage a middle school being built, right? Because you just drive there and there's the project, right? It's really harder for us to manage 20 lighting upgrades, right? Or 19 HVAC controls, because that's a lot more transportation. So,
I've talked to the facilities department. They haven't come to me yet saying that we need more help with the management of the projects. They're working diligently. I would say now, if we ever find ourselves in a situation where we feel like we're not making the adequate amount of progress, I think we're really getting through quickly. We've got 2 major projects getting done. But if we find ourselves in that situation, we will definitely come back to the board and say, hey, maybe we need to contract some of these out.
Trust me, Ruben will let us know.
Okay.
Ben Moore will let us know.
Yes, no, it'll be nice to see the final roll-up, once we get the final, some of those contracts that Alta's working on with us, because I think another one's out for bid right now. Once we start seeing those totals to see where we landed versus where we projected and how much cost savings we really did have by potentially somebody else managing some of this for us. Couple of the other projects, what we're looking at Converse, those site and civil upgrades, is that just the issues identified in the 2016 bond? Or is that also all of the issues identified that we added money to the 2022 bond for? Because we've got another, I don't want to say the dollar amount, it's over $10 million worth of money for site and civil upgrades for Converse. That was in the 2022 bond. So I wasn't sure if they're doing everything or we're just doing like phase one.
Well, we're in phase one, but go ahead.
Ms. Ramos, sorry, excellent question, Ms. Ryan. There are three sources of funds. We have the litigation fund, we have a 2016 project, the amphitheater, and then we have the 22, the full-blown site
Yep.
civil upgrade. So there's three separate pots at a minimum at this point.
Okay. And what are we designing right now? Because we have this out with MTR designing. Are we
So
just doing one of those three pots or are we doing everything?
So if you recall, the complexity of the site, the challenge ahead, if you will, was such that we could not even put a dollar figure on it. So the board has already approved a pre-design, which is they're coming up with, hey, this is the scope of the project that we would like to design.
Yep.
This is our estimated construction cost.
Okay.
We've already received an initial draft of their report.
Okay.
We will have a second follow-up to that meeting, and then we will have a recommendation prepared to address the entire site.
Okay, so the whole thing, they're looking at everything soup to nuts.
I would say, no, ma'am, they're not.
Oh, no.
What we're looking at right now for the design is to prevent some of the leakage and flooding that comes in when we have rain over there.
Okay.
That came about in the original lawsuit.
Okay, so just
That's the first
just the
priority.
2016
We're
lawsuit.
looking at the first priority
Okay,
right
so
now.
the rest of the site upgrades will be a phase two.
As we move forward, yes.
Converse.
They're
Okay.
not going to come in and do the whole campus. No.
Okay, we're not there yet. Okay,
No.
that's, I was just trying to figure out which, because
No.
we have multiple Converse pots of money going on, so I want to make sure which one we were working on over there. Because, yeah, they're one of 4 campuses that has some pretty significant site upgrades. Copperfield's just going to keep on sinking, into the ground.
It will not. We will prevent that. Everyone in
Yes.
Copperfield is safe.
Exactly. No, it just, the sidewalks,
Yes, ma'am.
tripping, and we keep
Yes,
putting
ma'am.
new things to make it a little bit safer, and then it sinks another inch, and we gotta redo it. So I don't wanna be throwing money at redoing ramps every 6 months, because it just keeps moving a little bit type thing. Let's see which other ones I had questions about. Wagner wraparound, are we done? Do we have like a grand opening schedule?
We are really close to completing that project. I'll let you guys. I apologize. Go ahead.
We're really close to completing. We're scheduling inspections with the county. That's scheduled. We're trying to get that scheduled for the first week in August. Working with the University Health System for a soft opening.
Okay.
And then sometime, maybe October, we'll be looking at a
Some
grand
sort of
opening.
grand
you know.
opening, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Whatever, I don't know what we want to call it, but, yeah, I know that's going to be a huge asset to our employees and our
Yes, ma'am.
families and our kids, so I know we want to be able to celebrate that. In terms of the athletic complexes, how are we doing on those? Veterans and Wagner? Football
Moving right
season's
along.
approaching, so I'm going to keep asking.
Veterans is pretty much complete. We should be ready to bring a certificate of substantial completion soon, probably the next board meeting.
Okay.
And then Wagner, we're finishing up in the sense of the fencing and those types of things, so everything's good for both of them.
I think the statement he's looking for is on time and under budget.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just wondering, when is the football team going to get on the field? That's what I'm looking for, is when
They'll be
does
ready.
the football team get on the
We
field?
will be ready.
Be
And
ready
the
for
soccer team
football
and
season.
everybody else. Oh, and that was I think you mentioned it. So the fencing and the gates, that was all included in the projects for those two to fence in those two areas
For the athletic
for the
fields?
athletic complexes?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
so those are part of,
Well, the.
I don't think
Or is it part of the fence?
Wagner, yes.
for Wagner?
And for veterans? Okay.
Okay, so those won't be part of the fence project, they're part of the athletic complex project, okay. Let's see what else I had. There's 4 other items on 2016 bond. And I know we've talked, it's been a little while since we've talked about these. Woodlake Hills Middle, are we still in a holding pattern on what they're gonna do with the things that were supposed to happen there, the moving of the life skills, and I don't remember what else was in their 2016 bond
I don't
package.
believe we're in a holding pattern. I think we were moving forward with that. We had determined which classes we were going to convert, and we're in the process.
Oh, are we? Okay, I didn't see it on there, so I wasn't sure if we were doing anything with that one.
That's the one with yes, the life skills with the
Special ed.
shower, the
Yeah.
special education. Yes, we've already identified the room. And
Okay,
so-
so we are gonna be moving forward with that one, okay. There's money left in J-Care, what are we doing over at J-Care?
J-Care originally.
I don't remember.
Again, I'm sorry to step on.
No, go ahead on that one, because
J-Care originally was a combination of the old Converse School and the adjacent building. We sold the old Converse School, now it's a QT.
Okay,
There's funds still available there, so we'll be able to close that out eventually. I know that they were going to do some parking lot renovation stuff, and
Okay.
once that's complete, we'll be able to close that account
then we can move the
out
rest of that
and
money
move
into
those funds
contingency,
somewhere. Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
And then there was a little bit left in the Judson High School pot for 10,000, or do we still have something we're closing out at Judson High School from 2016?
You know, because it was in 2016, we're really just trying to make sure that we handle all the big projects before we just start shutting
Okay.
down. In addition, I would tell you that, I guess I'm really jumping the gun here, and I apologize, gentlemen. There's some things that the high school campuses need, and one of them is a huge marquee commensurate with a high school campus. And we're looking at getting that done, so we're trying to let that money sit there until we bring it all together and determine, is it going to be 100,000, 200,000, whatever it may
Okay.
be. And then that's what we'll bring back to the board and say, hey, we want to put, because if you go over to veterans right now, they have yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
And it has
I don't
said,
even wanna-
have a
yeah.
great
They have
summer
an
for
iPad out
15
front.
months.
We
For
want to-
15 months, it said, have a great summer.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, ma'am.
Even all winter.
We're working on that.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. There, shout out to Dr. A. Okay, and then technology, there was like 7,000 in there, that's just holding. There's nothing else from 2016 you're doing, right?
For
Okay.
2016, it's just holding.
Okay.
I know that she has quite a bit for 2022,
Oh,
but
yes,
for 2016.
yes, no. I just want to make sure there weren't other projects that I just wasn't tracking. Sorry, I promise, you won't have to talk about stuff at all next month. I won't ask any questions.
I'm going to hold you to that.
we're going to hold you.
Everybody heard that.
Everybody heard that? Well, bond oversight starts in August, so I won't have
That's
to ask
right.
you any questions. Oh, fencing, so, and we'll see this later on in the thing, so phase 2, is that gonna finish out all the fencing? There's
That's the
only 2
remainder-
phases to that?
That's the
Okay,
remainder of the campus.
okay,
14
awesome.
campuses.
And then for the gym HVAC, oh, I looked at the RFP, but I didn't write down the names of the schools. Is that only gonna be a 2-phase? Are all the remaining 11 schools in that currently pending RFP? Or is there gonna be a phase 3 to the gym HVAC?
No, it's just two.
Just 2 phases? All 11 schools are in that second one? Awesome. Yay. Okay, that's all I have. I appreciate your patience.
You know, ma'am,
Sorry,
thank
we're-
you. I appreciate you asking and clarifying.
These are,
Thank you.
when people start coming back to school and parents start re-engaging with Judson and stuff like that, and they start coming back on their campuses, they start looking around, right? They start looking for what got done over the summer and what's the progress, and they start asking a lot of questions about when I'm getting my playground, when's the roof getting replaced? Well, now we know we've kind of gone through this thing soup to nuts, and
Yes, ma'am.
we're able to speak to all the projects we do have going on and all the progress we made this summer.
Thank
So
you.
I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you all for all your hard work. I know y'all been tearing over the whole district, watching sewer lines get dug up and everything else. So I appreciate everything the whole facilities team and Alta's doing. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Macias, you're next.
Yes, again, my apologies for being late. Thank you for accommodating. I did let my board president know I'd be late today, so it should be an excuse tardy. But 2 real quick questions is, one is just about the access. You know, we've had in the past, we've had substitutes at doorways, letting people in. I know we've worked a little bit on that. Is that going to be something that's going to be complete before the fall of this year?
I can answer that question. Yes, sir. We are continuing to work on adding those in. We have a slight delay on some of those, but the majority of those will all be in. We are doing the district offices last in terms of those door access panels. One of the things that we're also changing this year is that we will be providing access cards to the campuses that will go in the substitute folders, so that when a substitute comes on campus, they will get a key to their classroom, they will get an access control card that will work there on the campus. So we have been on schedule to have all of the access control panels installed at all the campuses. We are just going through and making those adjustments. And I can put an additional report coming up, not tomorrow, but for next week on exactly where we are. I know I put one in the Friday notes for the board about a month or so ago that talked about the timeline for that. So the goal was to have all of those panels in by the first day of school. I believe we are still on track, but there may be one or two that will remain out there, but it will be shortly thereafter.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one is, obviously, these bond dollars that we finished in 2016, they're still, I guess, pending opportunities or projects in some of the campuses we have on other districts. I know that we talked some time ago about having sort of a needs assessment that would be prioritized, and we talked about, I think, Alta possibly doing that. Where are we in respect to that? Do we have update?
We did have a meeting to discuss the entire district as far as assessments for like HVAC. They had already did an assessment. And so now what we did was we met with them to come up with a priority list and basically get a suggestion as to, okay, based on the assessment you did, what do you suggest we attack first? And how do we prioritize? And so that's kind of where we are right now. So the company is working on that list right now.
When do you think we could probably see a preliminary draft on that?
Well, the assessment has been completed. What we did was then asked another company to Alta to look at it and say, hey, how do you feel about this assessment? They felt like it was an excellent assessment, or it was good.
Okay.
So now what we're looking from them is, what's the priority based on you going around looking for these? So we're kind of waiting on them to get back to track. So I would say, I don't know, has an ETA been given on when they could get that done?
Both firms, their proposals due in 2 weeks.
2
Got
weeks.
it.
2 weeks.
And
Okay.
I'm assuming we would have to come back to the board depending on costs. to
Right.
make that move.
And just a point of clarification, that the two companies, neither one is Alta, but.
Oh,
this
I
one-
apologize.
Yes,
I just knew we had someone looking
Yes,
at
sir.
it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure that we're still looking at that and when we
Yes,
could
sir.
expect
Absolutely.
something. I tend to look at Wagner and some of the upgrades that their campus needs, and so just obviously would like to see what the assessments look like and where the priorities need to be in the
sir.
district.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Let's move on, please, to consideration of consent items. If you will let me know what you would like to pull, if anything. Ms. Ryan, I'll start with you because you tend to have the most.
Don't want to pull anything else after I pulled mine. I'm pulling B as in boy, C as in Charlie, E as in echo, F as in foxtrot, H as in hotel, I as in India, K as in kilo.
I'm sorry, what was the last one, ma'am?
K as in kilo.
She said H-N-I? And K.
H-I-K. H-I-K.
Thank you.
Ms. Stanford, did you have anything?
C and F, which are already pulled.
Okay.
I didn't think F had been, but okay.
Oh, yeah.
You said F, Ms. Ryan?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
she said.
My apologies, I missed that one. Ms. Faulkner? Mr. Macias?
None.
All right. So may I have a motion for A, D, G, J, and L, the remaining items, please?
I move that we accept those consent items as mentioned.
So there's a motion by Mr. Macias and a second by Ms. Stanford. And if we will go ahead and vote, please. Motion passes 5-0. All All right, moving back to item B, consider and take action regarding approving of expenditures equal to or greater than $50,000. Ms. Ryan.
Yes, I have a question on most of these.
Yes, ma'am.
Gosh, is Mr. Holmes here? He knows, I'm gonna ask him the same question. Hi, I'm gonna ask you the same questions I asked last year. SAT, so we're talking about moving the PSAT to 10th and 11th grade instead of doing it in 8th or 9th grade like we used to do, or most places did as a, a I guess, what's the point of giving it in 11th grade? Like, the ship has kind of sailed by the time you get to 11th grade, right?
Okay, so the way the PSAT works is they give, so the SAT has what they call SAT suite of assessments, which PSAT 8-9, PSAT 10, PSAT NMSQT. And so the PSAT 8-9 is generally taken in 8th or 9th grade. And it is just used to serve as a baseline and give kids who are interested in starting early, knowing where they are and having a plan to move forward. We're recommending that we don't continue that this year, and here's a couple of the reasons why. Number one, it is another day that students lose during the 8th grade year for an assessment, and that's a day they could be learning. Number two, the main benefit of it is that it gives us the ability to start a study plan. Now SAT has gone online and they created an app called the Blue Book app. It allows you to do the same thing. You can take the test there, link it to Khan Academy, have a personalized study plan to begin studying for the PSAT and then for the SAT. And it works. I actually might have made my daughter do that. Anyway, don't tell anybody. And so that's why we're really thinking PSAT, we want to try and save money this year anywhere we can. And so this is an area we're looking at it. And we said this is something that we're able to meet those needs and benefit the kids. Although we do lose the opportunity to test during the year, but I think that the trade-off is worth it there. And so for the PSAT NMSQT, which we give in 10th and 11th grade, this is a little bit of a different animal because that test is the National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. And so that one we do need to keep because that's that's the test that kids take to become a National Merit Scholar. And so we give it at the 10th grade level, and that gives you a baseline, and we give it at the 11th grade level, right? And so then the 11th grade one is the one that counts for the National Merit Scholarship. It's also the PSAT. They've basically designed it now to where it mirrors what the SAT does. Even your score that you get from the PSAT and MSQT gives you a rough estimate of what your score would be on the SAT if you took it at that moment. So it's,
Okay, because, yeah, it didn't used to be like that. Those
No,
two didn't used to
they used to not.
correlate very well at all.
I think SAT finally picked up on it and realized, wait a minute, we need this. So it scales perfectly, and you should know about where you're at. And then, does that answer your PSAT question?
Yes. All right, I'm gonna let you off the hook on the SAT because we're gonna talk about ACT now.
All right.
Because we had a whole conversation about ACT last year.
We did.
Because this would be what, year 3 or year 2?
Year 2.
Year 2 of it. And we had, no, because you had data last year, so this must be coming up on year 3, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry, we have 2 years of data. I
2 years of
apologize.
data,
That's what I
correct.
meant. Yep,
We
sorry.
would be going into the 3rd year of it. So
Correct.
after the first year, the return on investment was very low because you had a small handful, literally probably what, you said 4 or 5 kids that may not have done well on their TSI or their SAT, but for some reason had a great ACT day, right? So
Correct.
we spent $70,000 and we got 5 more kids qualified, for their TSI. Is the data looking better because this?
The initial answer is yes, indeed it is. And so, let me pull this, I don't know why I'm struggling here.
While you
Why?
pull that out, I'll say this. When I went around and spoke with the campuses during graduation, many of the seniors gave me feedback saying that they felt like the ACT brought them a lot of benefits that the SAT didn't. Matter of fact, it gave them access to scholarships that automatically, when they took the
Which I don't
ACT.
understand, because I went back and after I heard that, I went back and asked the college career counselor at our school, and they're like, there are no,
I
there are
can
no
tell you,
scholarships
the one
that
you may have
are
wanted to
ACT
ask was
only.
JECA, because they had over 30 million, and a lot of those kids attest to the ACT being the impetus for
Yeah,
being able
and
to
I had to go through all of this last year. So again, I had a senior who got into 90 colleges and got $10 million in scholarships. And the ACT was not a requirement or a bonus to her on absolutely anything. The gold standard was the SAT score. That's what got her the merit scholarships at all the colleges. That's what all of the scholarships that did require, don't get me wrong, a lot of things were still test optional last year, but if you wanted the extra $2,000 for your SAT score, whatever, you did still have to submit those to get your extra, and there were a number of scholarships that did require it. But even Midwestern schools, University of Michigan, the places where ACT is still popular, SAT was still the top line of things that they wanted submitted. And
Dr.
all of the
Fields, may I add
scholarships all over were still the things that they wanted submitted. So this is a lot of money, especially when, what percent of our kids stay in Texas? 99%, well, we have 1% that go out of state even. And SAT is clearly the gold standard for every college here in Texas. Nobody's looking for the ACT here in Texas, and that's where the majority of our students are. This is a lot of money. And another day out of school. And if you talk to parents of seniors from last year from our high schools, they'll tell you 2/3 of the kids were in that testing room with their head down on the thing and didn't answer a single question because they're the mandatory portion of it. Now, if we want to do a voluntary sign up and offer this as an option, but the mandatory testing of all seniors at a cost of $72,000, I don't think we're getting a return on investment on our money on that.
Ma'am, one of the things that is a new implementation is for our students going up to middle school is to take an advanced math if they scored in the 40th percentile. So we're going to have an influx of those students taking advanced math, which would get them to take the Algebra 1 test in 8th grade. For those students who take the Algebra 1 in 8th grade, they have to take additional testing at the high school. And the way that we're also doing that through the accountability office is through the SAT and the ACT. So the ACT is for math, correct me if I'm wrong. Science, and the SAT is for math. And so we also have all of these students that are going to be taking science, because most of the time, if they're good in math, we'll also enroll them in that advanced science. And so we're predicting having an influx of that. And so the ACT is going to be that test that is going to be required of them to take at the high school level because they've taken an advanced test in 8th grade. So there's also a twofold reason for having all of our students take these
There's no requirement by
exams.
the state of Texas. There are kids all over the state of Texas that take biology in 8th grade, and not all 1,000 school districts in Texas require them to take the ACT to pass high school. So I don't think that's accurate, that if you take 8th grade biology, you are required to take the ACT by the state of Texas. That's not a requirement, I don't believe.
You're not required to take the ACT. We are required to give the student a science test, basically, in high school, and the only test that counts is the ACT. And so for accountability, for each of those kids who don't get a test, it's the same as us not testing all those kids. It's like if we took a third of our 8th graders and decided not to test them in ELAR. It's the same view from the state.
So every other school district in the state of Texas, everybody's giving the ACT at this expense?
No, so the idea
Or how's
is
everybody
that
else
we
doing it, I
already,
guess?
let's say we have 30% of the kids that need that for their accountability, to count as accountability. Then the idea would be that, number one, there might be a number of students that would benefit from the ACT that might not take it on a weekend. And by offering it to students during the school year, it gives them the opportunity to score that. The tests are different, and some students do perform better on one or the other. You are correct that the SAT, especially on the coasts and in Texas, it's extremely popular. But the ACT also counts, and so the idea we wanted to do was to give them the opportunity to take each of those tests for free. I will tell you that the SAT, their junior year, is reimbursed by the state. So even though we get that cost up front, that cost is given back to us each year for those kids. And so then when you're looking at the two costs, you're really looking at one, which would be the ACT for seniors. And so we want to do a college readiness test Their junior year, SAT makes sense in that slot because the SAT is not as heavy on the content. ACT actually has higher level contents. And then their senior year, we'd give them that.
And I would be okay if we're talking about giving the test to the eighth graders who took biology, because most of those kids are probably college-bound children anyway, type thing. Or like we did, was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where we made SAT optional? You had to sign up. I don't remember what
So
year that was.
SAT was optional for seniors. Yes.
Seniors
We
1
gave
year,
it to them
right?
for
You had to do a
sure
Google
their
form.
junior year,
Okay.
and then they could take it optionally their
So
senior year.
I would be fine with us paying for people who opted in. But when you look at the majority of our seniors not wanting it, needing it, wanting to be in that room and being taken out of class, I'm not okay with giving it to everyone. That is a waste of money. I think there's less than a quarter of the people that want it or potentially need it. And even less than that, because, I mean, kids have their, by November 1st also, early decision packets all have to be in by November 1st. So giving the SAT your senior year, not super helpful either for the college stuff, because a lot of the scholarship and early decision applications, you won't have it back in time to be able to even do that.
The
So-
SAT that we're recommending now, though, is for 10th and 11th, and the ACT is for 12th, correct?
Correct. You'll be
Correct.
taking PSAT and then SAT in 10th and 11th,
Right.
and then seniors.
Or 11,
SAT.
SAT in 11th, and
Yeah.
then ACT in 12.
Right.
I would just say this, and I know you have a statement, Mr. Macias. Current literature suggests that a lot of colleges are moving away from the SAT as well. So the whole gold standard, a lot of colleges aren't even considering the SAT. I would tell you that a lot of students are identified when they take these tests as national merit scholars, sometimes ones that didn't plan on taking the test. So I think it's a benefit when we offer that to all of the students. And if this gives us an opportunity to meet that requirement for students that are advanced in science, I think it's the recommendation of the district that we provide both the PSAT, the SAT, and the ACT. And it's something we've done in the past. We recommend that we do that going forward.
And I guess I'd love to see some data on it, because national
So-
merit comes off of SAT. What has somebody gotten off the ACT, and how many kids have truly benefited from it? Because last year, with this exact same time, it was literally just a handful of people. And in a year where we are, every penny counts, like, we are trying to find efficiencies everywhere. And so deciding on the things that have the biggest return on investment, I'd rather see more prep course, an extra, this can buy a person, right? Like, this can buy a person who is helping kids with SAT prep, making sure they're in the Khan Academy, tracking their progress. Like, there's all sorts of other things we can do to get our kids more kids CCMR or the things that they need to go places with this $72,000 than locking, 1,800 seniors in a room for a day. And less than 10% of them actually trying, and 1% of them actually getting something out of it. I don't think we're gonna get our money's worth out of this.
Mr. Macias.
Yeah, I just want to also caution too, this is a $50,000 or more agenda item. So, right, it's letter B.
Yes.
So we're diving very deeply into the whole premise on SAT, if it's good, bad, ugly, all that kind of stuff. It's a 50,000 plus. So we should probably put it on the agenda as a dedicated item if we want to go into the much more detail about our strategies and our thoughts for the future. But my idea, just so you could hear, I would support administration's continued effort on this. I mean, if it helps students, I want students to be helped. And sometimes students don't know what they want, which is why we give those opportunities for them to take this exam. So it's something I've been a proponent for since I brought it to the agenda to where we pay for SAT tests in 2011, 2012. So it's been a long time that I've been a proponent for this. So I still want to see us do that, and any other opportunity to give credit and support for students trying to identify. The other thing, just to say and reiterate, is that these tests also give us the ability to have a third party, a national group, give assessments as to where we really are in grade level attainment that's separate from the state of Texas. It helps us understand what more we can do. So strategically, it's great to make these investments. So I'd like us to continue saying that. But I just wanted to say that this is a 50,000 plus. I support this effort and just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Ms. Stanford?
Just a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say that the ACT is a mandatory? Every student has to take it? 'Cause
So
I didn't-
we give the SAT to every junior in March, and then we give the ACT to every senior in the very beginning of November, so that they have both of those opportunities, one time each.
So is there an advantage to requiring it as opposed to it being optional?
So the idea of requiring it is more dealing with the fact that there are students who don't reach out to get what it is they need, but if you provide it to everyone, then they get that, and then that might be something that they didn't know about, they didn't think about, and now all of a sudden they have an opportunity that we created. Now, I will say that there are kids who are going to take that test, and maybe they didn't want to take the test, that's true, but there are kids who didn't think to take the test, but since the opportunity was there during the school day for them to go, they didn't have to go on the weekend, it was right there for them, and it was something that they were told, hey, on this day, show up here. They showed up, and it could have made a difference, so that's how
Okay,
we're
do you
running it.
personally feel there's an advantage to doing it that way? Do you feel there's an advantage
There
for our students?
There certainly is, and the state does too. That's why they reimburse one test for every kid. So one test, that's when we use it to pay for SAT. The reason we don't use it to pay for ACT is because they've already taken the SAT. But if we flipped it around, we could pay for ACT for free and then make us pay for SAT. But the advantage is that we're capturing those kids. The state's willing to put that investment in for every kid. And so we feel like it's worth it, especially considering the number of students that could possibly take that, walk out of here, say, you know what, this was something I didn't think was possible, now it is, so.
Thank you.
I'd say that the direct answer would be yes, ma'am, wholeheartedly. That's why we budgeted for it, and we're bringing it in for the over 50 amount. This was budgeted for. We plan on it. We wouldn't have brought it if we didn't think that it wasn't an advantage.
And we are trying to, we looked at all of the testing we were doing for the college readiness testing, college entrance exam testing, and we tried to cut in a different area. So we are saving around $40,000 on testing this year by not doing the PSAT 8-9 and not doing the optional senior SAT. And so that's going to save a substantial amount of money, but still allow us to have that two opportunities that every kid gets.
So I believe that our charge is to help create students, graduates who are ready for college, career, and military, and these kinds of testing do that. They give students the opportunity to get scholarships, to know where they struggle, so they know if there are any remedial courses they might need to take as they enter college. It informs them as to where they can go and be successful, and that's what we're supposed to do. So I do support this. Thank you for looking for ways to cut. It looks like you've got an almost offset by eliminating those two.
So the value that you're seeing, the reason why it looks so high is because that is a maximum cost if every single kid actually took the test. Every single kid doesn't ever take the test, and so the price will come in lower than that. So on the ACT, the reason you're seeing a higher price on that this year is because we want to make sure we capture all of those kids. And so we're going to offer a retest opportunity so that we can catch those kids who missed the first thing. And we didn't do that this past year. Something we realized, we're like, wait a minute, we lost, a number of kids, so let's go ahead and do that. I will also say that I'm confident, Ms. Ryan, that next year we'll be having the same conversation, and we'll have 3 years of data, and then we can look at that and say to ourselves, is this truly something? I think with 2 years, it's hard to really find a trend with 2 points. And so 3 years might be more interesting. I'll also say that the number of students meeting college readiness criteria on ELAR more than doubled this past year on ACT. So the results are improving, I will tell you that as well. But if we could look at it again next year, it might be something very interesting. And then maybe give you a little more of a data dive sometime after November when we really dug into it more then. And then you'd be maybe able to look at that earlier. So.
All right, thank you. Did you have any other questions on this particular item, B?
I don't on the SAT and ACT. I do have on the other 2 items. So do you want to do this all together or?
Well, B is one item, so.
Correct, yes.
So you need to ask any questions you have on B at
On
this
B,
time.
okay. Could you explain AVID and why, just what are we doing with AVID, especially at the elementary level? I'm used to it at the high school. AVID, sorry.
Ms. Davis?
Yes, ma'am. Avid, as you know, we are opening a college prep academy. And one of the things that we're doing at Woodlake Hills and Spring Meadows, as well as part of the new school model, they have to implement programs that help support college prep. AVID is a strong curriculum that helps support college readiness, college prep. It teaches the students specific study skills, and so it's part of the new school model for these two campuses. In
Paid for
addition,
out of the LASSO grant. I apologize.
yes,
Yes, ma'am.
yes. And so that is being purchased out of the LASSO grant. In addition, we have two innovation campuses that are no longer part of the grant, but they are part of Title campuses, and they are campuses still in need. So Title is made specifically for campuses who show that they have a need to help students. And so we're purchasing that for Park Village and Metzger to help support the students and help them be college ready. So there is a training, that it begins with a training. There are licenses for curriculum, and it'll be implemented at the LASSO campuses just at the initial grade levels, which is sixth grade for Woodlake Hills Middle School or college prep. And then at Spring Meadows, it'll be K-1. For the other campuses, it'll be implemented across grade levels.
Thank you.
Yeah, most of my question, I understand they do some new things when you start a new LASSO, and LASSO's always coming out with, different things, but this was never part of the original innovations at Park Village and Metzger. So,
And that's
like, now
because-
that they're out of LASSO, Title I's not a good excuse, because all of our elementary schools are Title I, so,
But they do demonstrate a higher need, and that's based on accountability scores. So part of the grant is designed for more money to be used where a greater need is identified. And the reason that we didn't use Avid in the previous redesigns is because those redesigns were focused on
Blended.
specific blended learning. This redesign on these campuses, it's not a redesign, it's an actual new school model with its own PEIMS number, is focused specifically on college prep. And Avid is designed specifically to support that.
for those two, but Park Village and Metzger are staying as blended learning, just with no grant money, right? I was trying to figure out why those two. Like, did their campus site-based, request this? Are we
Specifically those two,
piloting this?
because we still want to support innovation within the innovation campuses, and those two campuses still show, even though there was growth, for example, you'll see that there was growth in Park Village, we still want to be able to support those campuses to continue to innovate, to continue to support those students, do things that are different, but more than anything, the students still show need.
Okay, so these principals went out and found this program and asked for it specifically for their
Yes, ma'am.
campus?
Yes, ma'am.
And they've already gone through the training?
They're going, no,
Or they're
ma'am,
about
because
to?
it
Like,
hasn't
when's
been
that going to
approved
happen?
yet.
It's like the kids are
After
coming to school
approval.
soon.
Right after approval.
Okay, before the school year starts, so
Yes,
that they're launching it then? Okay. That's all I had on Avid. Avid. On the financial audit, I thought we talked last year about bidding this back out, because my concern is when you have the same audit company that's been looking at you for a decade, I know there's a benefit because they kind of know you and your systems, but there's also a benefit to an outside person looking at your books, especially with a new CFO who needs a really hard look at the books, right? Like, he wants the world's hardest, best audit right now because that's his benchmark type thing. So why didn't we bid this back out? Because we bid it out last July, and we had 5 bidders on it. And it was last minute. We were rushing, right? Like, we just had to pick somebody, and they knew who we were, and it was fine. But considering all the hiccups we've had, why are we not looking for an outside hard look this year to get us, nice and reset?
The RFP was approved last year in July at the same time, and it was approved for a period of 1 year with the additional 4-year, 4-year.
Right, I know we can extend,
period.
yes, we do many of our contracts, they're a 1-year term, and if we want to renew, we can, and that's why it's back at the board again, if we want to renew.
Well, one of the things that was different last year is we had these auditors also work with us as we implemented a new system. So when Dr. Fields took over in the middle of the year, we had just switched to a new system. It is not common to switch to a new system in the middle of the school year. So there was a lot of things within Skyward that we were learning, and so our auditors were very supportive of that. Now that we have things under control, we've now had a full year with the system, going through the fiscal year, we need that momentum so that we can continue without hiccup. One of the goals that we're striving for is to ensure that we have all of our audit materials ready before audit, as well as ensuring that we are able to present the final product in November. If you recall, because we had done that shift in the middle of the year, there were hiccups. Moving to a new company will land us in the same place. At this point in time, we want to continue to build that momentum with our auditors.
Yeah, it just, they've been doing it for 10 years, and when we keep getting letters from TA about, some things that were a little hinky, I wonder why these things are supposed to get caught in audits, right? Like, they're supposed to get caught, and so this company's been doing it for 10 years, and there's some things that didn't get caught before y'all, stuff. And so I'm not super, they're a great audit company, but like, I'm concerned with not having any fresh eyes on our finances now.
So those things were identified by the auditors in the comment letters, and those comment letters, that is what TEA, in fact, those letters, I do want to clarify, those letters are looking into fiscal years prior to Dr. Fields'
Yes.
leadership, and are specifically speaking to the things that were identified in those letters by the auditors. So then TEA takes those letters and says, okay, we would like to look into this further. Please provide a sample item on the following. And after providing those sample items, I do want to say, as I've shared before in the Friday notes, that those letters have come back clear because of the systems that have been implemented since Dr. Fields' leadership.
Correct.
That's all my questions, Madam President.
So did you have a comment? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, sorry, I have my mic on. Just to reiterate the other part of it, again, I support the idea of the auditor that we have. I think the recommendation to have some consistency based on understanding what we're looking for, they were forthcoming. I mean, they weren't like trying to just, be nice. I mean, they were literally saying what the situation was, which I thought was very helpful. So I want that noted as well. And then just, I'm really pleased to see the college readiness with Avid. I think that was good. Again, I had the honor of being on this board when unfortunately we had to cut the program many years ago. Bringing it back in pieces has been really good. You were there too. Ms. Kenoria was there too. So it's really refreshing to see us finally being able to take some initiative to bring some of these very supportive programs for students back. So just wanted to kind of put that out there. Thank you.
All right, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the expenditures equal to or greater than $50,000.
Second.
So there's a motion by Ms. Faulkner and a second by Mr. Macias. Go ahead and vote, please. Okay, motion passes 4-1. Item C, consider and take action regarding approving the attached budget amendments to the budget for 2025 fiscal year.
That's right.
Oh, I think Ms. Stanford has questions too. I just have two quick ones. Communities and schools, is that a line 11 instruction, or is that counseling or social work? I just wasn't sure if that was the right line when we added, because this is the first budget amendment one adds community and schools back in for the 160,000, right? Should that be in line 11?
I believe so.
They do instruction? Okay. All right, sorry, I thought they were more social worker guidance and counseling, but I'll trust you to bill that where it needs to go. The child nutrition, so this was a purchase from last year that didn't make it here on time. My only concern is we had a mandatory spend down amount for last year for child nutrition. Because this bill slipped to the next year, did we still meet our mandatory spend down of our child nutrition
ma'am.
fund balance last year?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
and that's always a negotiation with child nutrition. NTDA, so we are on track.
On track,
And
okay.
so we just shifted over now, and then Child Nutrition communicates with
And they'll still
TA.
get their credit for spending
Yes,
enough
ma'am.
last year?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to make sure we had spent everything we needed to spend, and this wasn't gonna cost us to get in trouble or them take our money or anything like that. So,
No, ma'am.
okay, those are the only two I had. Ms. Stanford, you have?
Yep. So this budget amendment includes the 1% raise that we passed, correct?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
The 1% would have cost us how much, just on its own?
The 1% cost by itself was $1,374,000.
Yeah, okay. And then, since we exchanged it for the $500 winter incentive,
Yes, ma'am.
we backed out,
So the $500 winter incentive was a cost of $986,000. So really, it was a net increase of $388,000.
okay, so 388 for the raise. And each employee that's getting this 1% raise, which is the teachers, counselors, nurses,
And librarians.
and librarians, is 670?
Yes,
roughly.
669.84 is what was added to each year.
Okay. And this calculation
Yes, ma'am.
is the way we've done it?
Yes, ma'am. This calculation of applying any raise to a midpoint is how Judson ISD has historically applied any raises to teachers, like, to the teacher pay scale, is through the midpoint. It is also a practice that is common across districts, to apply the raise to the midpoint, not to the actual.
Okay.
And it is how it is also defined in our compensation plan on page 9.
Right, and if we did do it differently, the 1% of each individual salary, then we would end up with about 1,400 employees getting less, while, 400 or so would get more?
That is
20.
correct. If we were to actually apply it to the actual, you would have your employees on 0 to 17 step.
We're the bulk of our teachers, nurses,
With-
librarians, and counselors.
Correct, which are the bulk of the employees in that area. They would receive less than the 669 that has already been calculated.
Okay. All right, so this seems best for across-the-board benefit.
Yes, ma'am. It is
Okay.
also how TASB recommended that we implement that raise for this year. I did share with the board through board notes how it is that TASB was recommending the implementation of the raise.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you.
May I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the budget amendments to the budget for the 2025 fiscal year.
There's a motion by Ms. Faulkner and a second by Ms. Stanford. Go ahead and vote, please. Sorry, mine wouldn't go. Motion passes 5-0. All right, item E, consider and take action regarding approval of the renewal for medical third-party administrator and the pharmacy benefit manager for the 2025 plan year.
Sorry, that's me again. Okay, so this, my question is about your feedback you've gotten from the employees on the administration of the program, right? So different from, everybody's really happy with the urgent care. Everybody's super happy with the surgery center. People are mostly happy with pharmacy. That's some of the feedback I've been getting. In terms of their conversations with Lucent, getting a hold of them on the phone, getting what they need, getting their referrals. How's that going from our employees' standpoint? Have we gotten some feedback from them on how well Lucent's been administering what we have?
I will turn this over to Dr. Taganon. I would tell you, to your point, Ms. Ryan, all of the feedback that we've received on the services that are provided, even from people in the cabinet, has been outstanding. If that speaks to the administration being able to contact people, I would say outstanding. I haven't heard anything contrary to, I couldn't get them on the phone, but when I did get them on the phone, they took care of everything. So, Dr. Taganon?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Fields. Yes, we have had a lot of positive feedback for our insurance and medical plans. Anytime that we have a change in provider, there's always some hiccups, especially when we are just trying to get used to a different person trying to get a hold of our maybe provider that we had before, and so trying to get in touch with the administrator. So our insurance committee actually meets every month, and they discuss issues, they discuss challenges, and then they also discuss things that they're really excited about. One of those things, if they had concerns of disruption of network services or things like that, it was solved by our concierge system. But there were some slight concerns in the very beginning with this turnover of getting a hold of somebody. And so we have worked with the company, and they've actually developed a call center way for us to be able to contact them directly so that they could better track it and better provide us that customer service.
No, that's great, because, it was a little scary going into a whole new plan last year, right? Like, it was a big change of benefits. Everybody's trying to figure out their own personal math. I'm like, does this help me? Does this not help me? Depending on your own personal situations. But how much the premiums had gone down, and then to see that they're not going up January 1st, that they are staying the same and your coverages are staying the same. Like, that is the thing that our employees freak out most about, probably, as we go through the budget and the compensation cycle. They're looking at that, and they're like, but what's insurance going to do, right? Because I got to offset all of that. So when, what happened with compensation happened, when we're not doing anything with insurance and it's staying the same, at least that's one steady thing in their life. And I think with another year under our belt next summer, this is probably a good thing to survey. I'm talking like Survey Monkey, like total informal, type thing, because it'd be great to know, like, what are their favorite parts of the plan, right? Like, what's totally working so as we go through, because, insurance, you got to renegotiate things every year, right? And we want to make sure we don't in the future lose the things that people love and think they're amazing, and just giving people a chance that if there's things that could work better. But again, the plan is still pretty new to everybody, so a lot of people probably haven't had a chance to try out some of its features. Maybe they haven't been hospitalized or they haven't needed a certain prescription. But maybe by next summer, getting some more input, especially in comparing that to what the insurance committee reps are then saying, so that when we go through this process next year, we make sure if there's anything we do want to tweak, with our provider, then that can be negotiated. But I'm glad this is going very well, and to everybody between Brown and Brown and your department to get everybody into this system. I appreciate it, because yes, most of the feedback I have gotten has been extremely positive.
Thank you.
Anyone else? May I have a motion, please, Ms. Ryan?
I move to approve the renewal of the medical third-party administrator and the pharmacy benefit manager to be Lucent and PCA for the 2025 plan year.
Second.
So a motion by Ms. Ryan, a second by Ms. Stanford. Would you please go ahead and vote? Mine does not want to go. There, okay, it doesn't like me tonight. Motion passes 5-0. Item F, consider and take action regarding approving the second reading of Policy Update 123 affecting local policies. Ms. Ryan, you pulled this as well, and I know, Ms. Stanford, you had something for that as well?
Yeah, I've got some questions. On the CKC local, which is, I guess, page 1 of 1.
Emergency management plans, yes, ma'am.
Yes, the blue part, develop procedures and notifying parents regarding violent activity, blah, 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 that part of it. That's a new requirement, right? That like district has to have official written procedures of how we're going to do parent notifications. I mean, I know we've been notifying parents, but.
Correct.
Have we had a standardized Judson protocol for that?
We have a protocol for getting that done. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we
Okay,
do.
all right. I wasn't sure if that was,
It's already
so those do exist. I mean, I think as I look across my kids' school, there's been some levels of standardization that I can see when I get messages from multiple schools. On CKEA local, security personnel.
Yes, ma'am.
With peace officers. Hold on, let me make sure. I'm on page 2 of it. Oh, do we already have the MOUs or interlocal agreements with all 7 jurisdictions? Because it looks like that's a new requirement. So do do we already have those and we
As a
didn't need them,
police-
or we need them now?
We have MOU, I'm sorry.
We do, we have all of them.
All of them already existed, it's just now the state made us codify it
Yes,
in a policy
we've
letter.
worked with all of them for the access that they need to our
Okay.
campuses, yes.
It talked about video monitoring. Do we already have video equipment
Yes.
on all the police cars?
We have them on the police personnel.
No, do we have them on the cars? Because there's something, video monitoring, video equipment shall be used on district police car for safety purpose whenever flashing lights on the car are in use.
We can, I mean, with this update, these are things that we'll have to implement.
Okay.
I can tell you currently, we have video monitoring on the police officers. We have training on that of when they're supposed to turn it on or have it on. If it says that we're supposed to have it on the cars as well, then we'll include that once
Okay,
this is passed.
and look, and
tonight.
it says if available, so I just, we might want to
Right.
look and see, get some more guidance from TASB, like, do we really need to have them, should we have them, type thing. And then the other question, we already have, like you said, we already have the body cameras for
Yes,
every
ma'am.
officer, right? We bought those like last year. It also added training for anyone who has access to that body cam
On the storage and
footage.
retention, right.
So
and
like
release
the
of
whole
recording.
IT department, I'm assuming pretty much.
We're very familiar with that. I mean, Matt's our, go ahead.
Yes, we have very specified employees within our department. There are only 2 people in our department that can actually do that, and they do go through a certification process.
There is
Otherwise, they do
certification
not touch the
training
armed
already.
server. No.
Okay, so that's not, it may be a new codified requirement, but we were already doing that. So it looks like they got rid of or upon TASB's recommendation, completely got rid of EF local, and it's essentially being replaced by an EFA and an EFB for instructional resources.
That-
Instructional resources. The EF was just called instructional resources, and now there's an EFA called instructional resources, instructional materials, and there's an EFB called library materials. Because it looks like they cut those. I guess my question was kind of on EFB. Is this including all the HB 900 stuff? Because I'm really confused. As a parent, I had to sign some HB 900 stuff when I re-registered my kid in Skyward, and honestly, I have no idea what I just signed.
Okay, so
I shouldn't admit that, but,
I can explain that. So EF Legal and Local used to combine all instructional resources and libraries together. With House Bill 900, they divided those into 2 different pieces, and so this kind of addresses that.
Okay.
So one is just the instructional materials, and there were changes that were made minimally to the instructional materials process. That is simply just outlining some specific parameters for parent access to review instructional resources. Otherwise, that policy pretty much stays the same. The EFB that you're referring to is to address the House Bill 900. Now, part of House Bill 900 is under litigation.
Yes.
And the form that parents filled out, so the question within the litigation has to do with what is considered sexually explicit. And what it is that there is a concern about just those being marked with outside of the definition, and it's not very clearly defined.
well, and whether
So-
you can make make the publisher.
Make the,
break
exactly, and it
they
has
have
to do
no
with the
control
publisher
over that, yeah.
identifying that as well. And so what we did as a district, along with all of the other, with our fellow districts around the area, is in the event that that piece goes into action, what we included in our registration was whether or not you were okay, knowing your school district and knowing how we have handled our libraries at Judson, with keeping your child's access to library materials the way that they are now.
Okay.
Should that pass later, if you said, no, I don't want that, then we would have your child's name on a list, we would contact the parent, we would identify those titles for you, and then you could make that determination. So we wanted to go ahead and have that up front, just in case it was needed, should that pass. The other portions of that, they did align, they got rid of some of the older methods of identifying and going through the library collection. Now we actually will follow the archives process, the Texas State Library Archives, so we will follow those. We do have to create some additional policies internally, and in the odd-numbered years, by January 1st, we do need to go through and reevaluate all of our library materials to make sure that they are appropriate. It also has to do with making sure that we have lists of materials available to parents. So our online catalogs for our libraries have always been available to our parents to review. Those will still continue to be that. There is information in here as far as classroom libraries that teachers have that we will also have to collect a list of what those books are, and we're working with the curriculum instruction department to do that. Those, it only says if available online. We do not have that available online. We have not asked our teachers to do that, and we're not looking at that at this point, but we would need to provide some information. We are working on training materials as well as working with the librarians to develop that process, and we will be sharing that as we go into the start of the year to address this particular policy.
Okay. And I know what I talk to parents and community members about all the time, which is our schools really are open books. Your librarian is your teammate in your community. You want to come hang out in your school library and just go through books on the shelves? Just send an email and just ask. You know, if you bring a Starbucks coffee with you, that's even better, you know, and chat about books because, you know, our librarians want to make sure your kids are getting grade level books and books that they enjoy. Like that's their job, is to make sure your student is enriched by reading. And that looks different for different people, but literally just go in and communicate, and those librarians stand willing to help get your child the educational materials that they want. So, and we're open books, you know, we luckily have not been part of some of the drama that has existed in other school districts because we see our community as partners with our schools. And we don't have anything to hide. We're always gonna do what's best for kids. So,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Stanford.
I did have a comment on that same section, on the library and the instructional materials, and just wanted to emphasize that this policy encourages parents to be involved in the library acquisition, maintenance, and campus activities in general are heavily encouraged. So I wanted to emphasize that, and also remind parents and guardians that they can visit the library if they wish, just by getting permission from the principal. They can also access the online catalog with the request to the principal. So they can get titles that way. And that we are protected from inappropriate material because we follow Penal Code 43.24, that library materials shall not include harmful material or obscene material. So we follow that. So I wanted to just make a public comment as to our current policy. And then I also wanted to move to grievances.
Yes, ma'am.
As I had said, I was interested in maybe making a couple tweaks on our grievance policy.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I wrote down a couple suggestions that I handed out to everyone. And I mentioned two of these things last month, and one is to change the time frame for filing from 15 days, I think it was, to 20 days. To 20 days, just to give someone time to assess their sense of the grievance and to maybe try to work it out first and to find out what the process is, just a little bit more time. That's one suggestion I have. And the second one.
Go ahead. You want me to speak to that one now?
Okay.
I would tell you that TASB is the one who recommends the 10 to 15 days. If you look at, what was it that we were just researching today? The district, or the state disability or something like that. It says that if you're going to file with the state, you have to have filed a grievance within 10 to 15 days. So one of the reasons why TASB puts this is because if you're going to meet other requirements in the state, you had to do it within a certain time. If we extend ours to 20, that may leave some of our employees ineligible for higher grievances if they didn't do it in the allotted time.
Okay, good to know.
Now, if they're not going to appeal, to your point, one of the statements on here is that if agreed upon by both individuals, then there's something that can be arranged. But if we make it a standard that people can go outside of that window, it may compromise them from being able to appeal to a high authority.
And they won't know up front if they might want to do that.
And then AFT, we looked up AFT as well, and they recommend the 10 to 15 days
Okay.
as well, so.
Well, I wouldn't want to make a change that would limit an
Correct.
employee's options, so if that's in fact, what it would do, I would withdraw that particular suggestion,
Yes, ma'am.
okay? Level 1, the second paragraph.
Yes, ma'am.
This I do feel pretty strongly about, and that's to add a comment that if the complaint is against a principal or direct supervisor, it will either be heard by a third party not in direct supervision of the individual or elevated to level 2. So that a person doesn't have to sit in front of the very person they're grieving against and arbitrate officially for level 1.
Yes, ma'am. I can respond to that. Dr. Tag and I didn't mean to steal your thunder here or take it away, but I would also say that one of the reasons why we have the individual at the lowest level who could make a change, which is typically the department director or the campus administrator or principal, is because that's the lowest level in which something can be changed. And oftentimes, if you have a grievance and you haven't spoken with that person, then that individual hasn't even had an opportunity to rectify the situation and solve it at the lowest level before it needs to go to the next level. So that's one of the reasons why we have, and oftentimes with a grievance, it's not limited to just my grievance against the individual that I'm meeting with. There may be other grievances involved in which that individual does have the ability to rectify as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would just say there should be a way to separate then, so that they don't have to have their grievance that might be against the very person they're presenting it to and hearing it and making a decision on it, that they're not involved in that. That the person, that, to me, there's a conflict of interest. And I'd be interested in other board members' comments.
I think that when we're talking about hearing it at the lowest level, and when we talk to our administrators, our principals and directors in hearing these grievances, we do have to train people in being an unbiased listener and hearing officer. And so those are some things that we have trained and spoken about when you are the level 1 hearing officer. And so you've got to give an opportunity for that person that has the ability to do that, to grant remedies at the lowest level, that opportunity to hear what is actually being grieved. As well, to Dr. Field's point, there may not have been an opportunity for that person to hear the complaint that that person is alleging fully, and so that gives them an opportunity to respond to that and do whatever needs to happen or that can be done at that level.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering, how many grievances do we not hear because it was heard at the lowest level first? So what I mean by that is, if I have an issue with you, yet I'm not forced to have a conversation with you to try to resolve it, I think that, in essence, could create more issues between you and I without an opportunity to even resolve. Sometimes as a campus principal, I'm not even aware that someone is feeling a certain way or that a decision that's been made has impacted someone, and I would love the courtesy of someone bringing that to me to address it so that I do have the opportunity as the campus principal or the administrator or the director to correct that before it goes any further. So my whole point for saying that is I wonder how many grievances we don't even see because it was actually taken to the person at the lowest level from the very beginning.
And it could work the other way, too. We don't hear them because they don't want to do that. I would think that an employee would hopefully go to
Absolutely.
their supervisor before they file anything. But once they've decided to file, I would think the employee would not want it to be heard and adjudicated by the person it involves. I personally wouldn't.
Sure. I
So-
think there's probably two sides to the coin always, right?
yeah.
I think as adults and professionals, we should do our due diligence to try to resolve issues in the most appropriate and respectful way possible at the lowest level. Going back to the conversation we had earlier this week, I also think that that involves training on our end with communication and listening with an unbiased ear and being able to make those decisions.
Agreed.
Dr. Fields?
Yes, sir.
As a former principal, what I would add to that is if we were to allow someone else other than the principal, who would be the level one person, to hear a grievance and then be given the authority to grant remedies, I think that would be a conflict as well, because if that person is granting a remedy that will require the principal to do something, then where does the authority lie as to that, granting that particular remedy? So how would that look if, some other principal who may be, in your case, if you're saying that a different principal in a different campus would hear the grievance, well, if that principal is going to grant a remedy, and it requires the principal who's being grieved to do something, that could be a conflict as well. So I wouldn't be comfortable with that as a principal, to have someone else hearing a grievance that I'm being grieved about. So I just don't see that as being feasible.
Well, see, that tells me there is a conflict of interest at play, because if the principal who's the subject of the grievance would not grant a remedy that another principal would see reasonable, maybe it's because they're too personally involved in it.
No. Once the individual at the campus, once that principal sees it, if the person's not happy with that remedy, then it goes to the second level. And the second level is usually the people that you see on the dais. One of these individuals will be appointed as the second level administrator, and they're the ones who have the authority and the line supervision to go back to that individual and say, you missed the boat. And if that happens too often, that's when the training will come in. And if the training doesn't resolve the issue, then documentation, and then we handle it in another fashion.
I'm going to move to some other people, if that's okay.
Sure.
So get some input. Ms. Faulkner?
I'm having deja vu. Did we not have this conversation already? Once
We did,
before?
but now it's for approval tonight on the F&G, so I'm thinking Ms. Stanford brought it back as a reminder that she had a concern in this area, and she wants to see if that can be remedied before we approve 123, and it goes into policy after
I
tonight.
thought, okay, so just correct me if, I'm just trying to remember, that we would be, number one, creating a new policy that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And,
I'm not
and
confident.
Anywhere.
I can't speak to anywhere, but I can tell you that
we
in
were
prior
having,
districts
we were
I've been in, it's been this
essentially
way.
having to create another letter because we would be almost the only one.
It would be the first I've heard
Okay.
that we don't
And-
handle it at the level.
And this is the second reading, right? So we've already
Yes, ma'am.
approved this, okay.
Well, the first reading doesn't require approval. It's just for us to review.
Okay.
Sir.
This is when I make changes.
Ms. Ryan?
No, this is why I love that school boards have legal policy, those are the ones given to you, right? Because they're by the law, and we have local policy. We get to decide our local policies, the 7 of us up here, and if it's not illegal by code, we are allowed to do certain things, because we have seen this over and over in grievances now, and some of it may just be interpretation of the wording, because if Principal Brooks puts my daughter in lunch detention because she's wearing a crop top, she comes home and complains to me, I am not immediately jumping on my computer and filing a level 1 grievance, right? Like, that is not my first step. That's not anybody's step, right? My first thing is I'm calling, I'm emailing, I'm setting up a meeting. 99.9% of people are automatically going to the informal process. They are setting up all of those meetings. They're having the conversations. They're sending the emails. They only reach formal written grievance if it's within the 15 days and they're not getting the resolution. So and the issue becomes if it's with a principal, it is not, they can't grant the remedy. That's the problem in most of the cases. It's like, well, I want the principal written up. That's my remedy. Well, a principal, okay, let me write myself up and put it in my own personnel file. Well, like, that's silly, right? So it is supposed to go to the person who, per our own existing policy, has the authority to grant the remedy. So if the remedy can only be granted by a level 2, there is no level 1. It doesn't exist. And I think it's the opposite of what Dr. Saunders says, where things get resolved. I think people, and this is not just GGBA, this is FNG or this is the parents, employees, and our community members, because it's pretty much the same policy letter written in different ways for different groups, is that if my option, I'm told if I go formal, is I have to go sit back in a room with Mr. Brooks again, who already told me he's going to keep giving my daughter lunch detention, then what's the point of doing anything, right? Because I'm going to be stuck in the same room with you, and you're going to give me the same answers you've already told me. So instead, parents are just going to withdraw their kids from the district. They're just going to move on. They're just going to be angry type thing. And it can make people feel like they don't then have an outlet. And I understand if we were getting 100 grievances that were already going to level 2 and they had never even spoken to a single person about this thing, but I don't think that's the pattern that we've been seeing. And so I don't think this is, if I have a complaint against Mrs. McKinney, that, you know, clearly the principal is my next person I talk to, right? Because they have authority over Mrs. McKinney. But it's different when the complaint is against the level 1 hearing officer. Then having a level 1 hearing becomes inappropriate because those conversations have already happened and those remedies cannot be fixed by the person who is the person who's being complained against. So I agree, some sort of wording, I don't know if this is the right wording, the lawyers I think can word it probably a little bit better to capture what we're talking about. But when I think when the person the complaint is against is the level 1 hearing officer, I think it is appropriate that it gets elevated to a level 2. And if we all of a sudden start having issues where all of a sudden Dr. Saunders spends 9 hours a day listening to level 2s because everyone is just bypassing the principals, you know, these local policy letters can be rewritten at any time, right? We can redo these things all day and all night. So I have had an issue with this in all the grievances that I've kind of sat in, and I agree with you, Laura, that I think some tweaking of this wording will make our access to kind of due process and being heard a little bit better, and make people feel like they at least have an opportunity to be listened to by the appropriate level of person who can listen and hopefully resolve the issue. And maybe we'll get less level 3s because those level 2, we haven't burned our bridge at level 1, and level 2 has been able to step in while things are still not horrible, and then resolve those at level 2.
Mr. Macias.
Yes, I've noticed that the fundamental, or common denominator, I should say, for grievances is typically policy inconsistencies, our favoritism, our bias, and those are basically the claims in which people put forward a grievance, parents or employees. So usually that should be an indicator for administration if we're seeing a lot of inconsistencies in grievances being filed, that we need to kind of be consistent with that. That's ultimately, I think, one of the takeaways from grievances that we see. So as long as we're continuing to do that and track that, and I know it's all trackable, I know level 1, we all want to resolve the grievance at level 1, right? There's just some requests that just can't be done at level 1, so it goes to level 2. And then naturally, there are those grievances that want to come all the way to the board. And it doesn't matter what is trying to be resolved. They just want to come and sit in front of the board and talk, which they could always pick up the phone and call us anyway. But regardless, they want to go through this process. I know the idea that Ms. Stanford has proposed about extending the days has come from feedback we've heard from the community about not being aware that there was a 15-day timeline, or having trouble scheduling that one-on-one with campus leaders, and then running out of time. And so that's always an issue, because now the parent or the community member feels like didn't have the ability to go through a process. It doesn't happen a lot, but it happens. Secondly, the idea to revise our local policy independent of all other districts is nothing to be afraid of if it makes sense. I know that Ms. Stanford said she's not going to, that she's okay with that discussion, the feedback you gave her on the days. But the most important thing is to look at, is there a general bias by level 1 peeps to hear agreements that they've already said we're not going to support? You can file, but I'm not going to change my mind. And those are certain attitudes that come in when in the first level says no, file it, but I'm still going to say no, and it needs to go to level 2. It does create an air of frustration, and we're trying to be a little more conducive for
Customer service.
yeah, and I don't want to use customer service, it's really student and parent service, but it's the same idea, that we're being responsive. That's the word I'm looking for, responsive, which we are, and I think we naturally want to. So I'm okay with us looking potentially at revising some of our approaches to this, but I'll stop short from the days for right now. But I will say that if we could look at option of who could hear the level 1, that might be a good pilot for us to kind of see if that empowers folks. Now, mind you, it goes back to what Mr. Brooks said about the authority. At the end of the day, the authority still needs to lie with someone central. It can't be punted to someone else. But at least the opinion could be from this independent person. Hey, I heard the grievance. I don't have a dog in this fight, but you know what? Based on what I heard, you probably should do A, B, or C, or D. But that's sort of just a different innovative approach.
I would say, and I know you have next, if you don't mind. Ms. Stanford, I understand where you're coming from. I would have no problem if, one, I'd like to implement some procedures that may help us, like maybe have one person that all of this funnels through. That way you have one single eye that sees everything, and if you see this increase of a bunch coming from a different area, because right now, there's several people that handle grievances, some on the employee side, some on the community side, the parent side. If we put all of them under one, then we'd have one eye focusing on that. Second, if having the person who's being grieved against is that important to the board, I have no problem then referring that to level 2 and not having a level 1. It just goes straight to level 2. I think we'll do better with level 1, and I think that we'll get more resolved at level 1, because I was a principal as well. If I had an abundance of grievances that came my way, I did some self-searching to say, what's going on here? What am I not communicating well? What do I need to do differently?
I would say that the only option on that is they have to meet a criteria. If they want to jump from level 1 to level 2, they have to check the box. Have I had discussion with the campus leadership? And if they can't check that box, then they can't go to level 2. It's sort of like we can create a process that makes sense. I would expect, as Dr. Saunders said, that there is that two-way dialogue at the lowest level first, because it's the best way to resolve the issue.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all. Thank you.
So I'm willing to bet that I'm the only person on the dais that's had a grievance that actually went to level 3. It started with the campus principal, and I will say there was a great deal of animosity between us. She wasn't happy with me, I wasn't happy with her. But it was important to do the level 1 because there was part of that grievance that she could grant. And you don't always know that until you go into the level 1. You don't always know what authority they have. Have they spoken to someone else once they were given the paperwork that the grievance was coming? Has there been something that they could do? So I'm very reluctant to make a wholesale move that just because you disagree with your principal, you should not have a level 1 there. My level 3 wasn't granted, I'll give you that. And I worked real hard to get some new school board members after that. So what I'm hearing is that we have concerns about this particular item. I would say that we pull it. You bring back a policy that you think fits for the grievance thing for us to vote on in the August meeting. If we're not required, is there a requirement that we pass this tonight?
It's part of the package.
Right.
We can always amend a local policy as we move forward. We're not locked into any of these throughout. I would, if it's part of 123,
Yeah.
I'd rather do it the way that it is now, and then we make an amendment to that as we move forward based on this one thing. Whether or not, I like your feedback of.
I like that too.
We have to have some type of dialogue with the person who can resolve it, even if it's against that person. And if you can't answer yes on that, then you got to show that you've worked at it. But what I'm hearing also is we need to work on our communication to employees, to the community, to everybody on the grievance process and what they can do to get that done quicker, because I don't want someone sitting around if they know that they want to move to a certain level. So I would ask that we just do it in this way, but next board meeting, we can bring back some amendments to this policy.
And I could support that too, but I would just say I had a thought that you said.
I apologize.
That's okay. No, you were fine, but darn it if I can't remember my thought. Bottom line is, yeah, I'd be supportive of you bringing something back in August.
Ms. Stanford?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that I'm not suggesting we jump level one. I'm certainly suggesting that the people try to resolve it before they ever file for level one. But once they decide to file, that's where I'm suggesting that they not have to have the formal hearing, or that the level one hearing be in front of the person that they've already tried to talk through things with.
And that's when I'm saying that if that becomes the case, then we could put in a procedure where then it goes to level 2.
You could, I don't know if that's preferable, because I was thinking we could even create a rotating panel.
It would be for me just to go to level 2, because the process is these individuals are supposed to be the ones that go out and do that. And then if it's not resolved at that level, it may go to level 3. But I don't want to have a panel of people, a peer or anything like that, looking over a grievance that's towards a person when I can just take it and give it to one of these.
Okay.
And they have the authority to make a call.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes, I was just going to say, I think you're right that we're fine, because what is passing this, because the changes in this have nothing to do with the paragraph we're talking about anyway. So it's not like we're approving something and then changing it, like it's not even addressed as a change, so our policy letter would continue. But yeah, if either TASB Policy Services or our attorneys can come up with 2 or 3 different types of paragraphs, give us a little menu, right? And then we can tweak it, because one motion may pass on it, one might not. If they can just give us a couple of different options with your input and what we've said in this meeting, and then next month we can just hash it out and see if anything gets votes.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Taggart, I'll let you get on. Okay, thanks.
Ms. Stanford?
There was just that other item which I had added or suggested that we add is the district has 10 working days to schedule each level conference or appeal. However, timelines may be waived or shortened if agreed upon in writing by both parties. And that was simply to allow the ability for the process to be sped up if everyone was in agreement.
Well, sped up, we just call and say when you would like to have it. We like the opportunity for both people, because what we've seen, Ms. Stanford, is that we'll call and they'll say, hey, I'm going out of town, I can't make it. My representative won't be available at that time. So then we just come to an agreement on when that's going to be, and then we can work outside of that window if both parties agree to work
So
outside.
you pace yourself based on their
Correct.
availability?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can I jump in on one more thing? Because I think not just GBA, you're talking about all 3 grievance policies too, right, Laura? Yeah, if we could look at it for FNG and
GF.
the other one.
We do the
What's it,
same.
GF? Okay, thank you.
All right, so may I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the second reading of the policy update 123 affecting local policies.
Second. So there's a motion by Ms. Faulkner, second by Ms. Canoyer.
And is that
And-
with the assumption, Madam President, with the assumption that we're going to come back and?
We're gonna
Correct.
come back. Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
We don't
Next
have to
month,
put
we'll
that
look
into
at.
a motion?
No, we've given him a directive.
Okay.
So he'll bring it back in August for that. All right, now you can vote, please. Motion passes 5-0. Item H, consider and take action regarding approving the staffing report. Ms. Ryan?
Yes. So this month's staffing report is the new numbers for 24, 25. What I'm looking in the blue column, right? The number of positions, is that our
This is just one of our running lists that we have.
Okay.
just running lists of vacancies and hires, and so it's not being pulled from Skyward or
Or
anything
anywhere
like that.
else.
So we have some other just internal documents to track this particular report.
Okay.
We'll get cleaner numbers for you all. We've just hired a position control person.
Okay.
And so we will have a dedicated person to be able to provide numbers that will accurately match what we have in our systems in Skyward. So
Okay,
They
because
are
my
cleaner
concern was I
numbers.
went a couple months back, which I assumed were last school year's numbers, and that these were probably closer to next school year's numbers. And what I saw was a bunch of drops in our special ed authorizations. So like high school, from like the March report into this one, went from 80 sped teachers down to 68, middle school went from 76 to 68, and the elementary went from 100 down to 93. So it looked like it was a decrease of like 27 authorizations or so from last school year to this school year. And that confused me because we already knew our caseloads were through the roof last year, and we're adding new special ed kids like literally every single day.
we
so-
haven't decreased any staffing allocations for our sped teachers. Like I said, this report is being run off of
A different
a
type of
literal
thing. Okay,
spreadsheet.
all right.
And so we do have some cleanup to do in our systems
Okay.
as far as removing actual positions that are not vacancies. And so hiring that person will be able to help us clean that
Okay.
up. And so I would gather that next month, you will have a cleaner report to be
Cleaner,
able to
okay.
do an actual comparison from March to here. You're not going to see the FTE allocations
Okay.
as accurate on this particular
one.
spreadsheet.
Okay.
This is the one that goes,
All right,
is
I just
very
wanted to
fluid.
make sure I wasn't
Yes,
supposed to
ma'am.
trekking a trend of reading, because
No,
obviously
ma'am.
we've lost some teachers because some enrollments have gone down place, like there's reasonable reductions that have been made. I
Yes.
just wanted to make sure that wasn't in special
We
ed.
have not
that
reduced allocations.
Those should have gone up, okay. That was the only question I had on this, on the staffing for this month. So I look forward to the position control person, so. Oh, do you want any other questions, or I can make the motion?
Any other
now?
questions? Nope. All right, motion, please.
I move that we approve the staffing report.
Motion by Ms. Faulkner, second by Ms. Stanford. Go ahead and vote, please. Ms. Stanford? It didn't go, Ms. Stanford. Press your vote first. There you go. Now it's going. All right. Motion passes 5-0. Item I, consider and take action regarding the MOU between JISD and the Simon Youth Foundation for the 24-25 school year. Ms. Ryan, you pulled this.
Okay, I just want to make, it was a really long document, so I just want to make sure I'm tracking, like, the actual content changes that are the big thing. So, the big things I pulled out of it was, compared to the previous MOU, so our agreement with them used to be having at least 50 students, and I'm assuming based on our enrollment trends and their wonderful support of us, that's now up to 95 as the goal, and up to, they'll support up to 150 if we can recruit that many kids in?
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's based on how well we've done and
We
working
typically,
together,
yes,
getting
ma'am.
kids into the program, right? Like, when we first signed the MOU, it was still kind of new, and kids were trickling in, and now they're coming in a little bit more? Okay,
When we first established it, it was over in Rolling Oaks Mall. There was a few kids. Now, you know, we have a lot more taking advantage of it.
okay, no, and I'm glad they're financially able to continue to support those
Right.
increased enrollment numbers. Do you think moving out of the mall, moving over to Kirby Middle School helped with that? Do facilities make any difference? Like, do they like going to a school, or did they like, you know, or it didn't matter?
I think they probably preferred going to the mall.
Okay.
I mean, they're kids. But I don't think that moving it to Kirby was a bad move. It
Okay.
got them back in the atmosphere, the people who, it's really about the people who work in the program.
Yeah.
And they are really stellar individuals who focus on a student coming in saying, hey, I just don't like the comprehensive high school atmosphere. I want another way to get this done. And they just really walk them through the process. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Okay.
I
And
do,
then,
I do think that there was some transportation issues for some students, though, not being
That's
able to
true.
get to the mall.
oh, because now can they jump on the bus to
You
Kirby?
can go via, they can't
Or the
jump on
via.
the Judson bus,
They don't
but they can
jump
go
on a
via.
Judson bus,
Yes,
but they
ma'am.
can get other public transportation. Okay. No, and I'm glad Simon Youth Foundation is okay with that, because, originally this was use up empty mall space, charitable donation write-off. So thank you, Simon Youth Foundation, for continuing to support schools who are doing this in a slightly different way than it originally rolled out as, in order to support students.
Yes, ma'am.
The only real changes I think I saw in kind of the cost model is we're just using furniture that's at Kirby. When we were at the mall, they provided all the furniture and set us up, and now we just moved them into extra classrooms at Kirby, and they're just using all that furniture and equipment, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then now we just end up paying the utilities because they're using our water and electricity. Okay, all right, those are the only changes. I didn't miss anything else major out of this MOU. The rest of it was just cleaning up of language.
Thank you.
All right, that's all I had. If anybody's got any other.
All right, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the MOU between Judson ISD and Simon Youth Foundation for the 24-25 school year.
So motion by Ms. Faulkner, second by Ms. Stanford. Go ahead and vote.
Oh, sorry, hold on. Okay.
Motion passes 5-0. And item K, consider and take action regarding approving the Memorandum of Understanding with Youth Guidance's Evolve program. Ms. Ryan.
Okay, so this is, oops, sorry, my mic wasn't on. So this is a new SEL curriculum for secondary, 6 through 12?
Yes, ma'am.
This is like in addition to,
It's not necessarily new. I think we're already doing it, Dr.
For
Summers.
middle school and high school only, in addition to the SEL curriculum that's already in place.
okay, because we don't have Evolve already, and we're not doing BAM or,
I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say
Wow.
no. There are some portions of it here at the ERC, but no, we do not have it at the middle schools and the high schools yet. This
Okay.
is to bring it there.
to bring it there. Okay. Is this, the way it's written, and from looking at their website, is this one of those things that's free for now because they want to pilot it with us, and then in order to get test data, and then this is going to become something we have to purchase down the road? Because it looks like it's just a couple of small groups. Is this their full thing that they do and how it rolls out to everybody? Or is this still in some piloting test
So if
phase
you,
and we're part of the pilot?
if you look at their website, which it sounds like you might have, there's like a suite of other
Things they do too.
services that are
Yep.
involved, right? This is sort of the low level, beginning with professional development, and then like it references in here, circle leaders
Yeah.
and so forth. All of those are people that are already on staff. So for example, lead counselors, at-risk coordinators, at-risk counselors, those guys would serve as the circle leaders. So.
Yeah, I guess that was my other question, because it
Yes.
sounds like educators, which I'm like, hold on, in their Illinois eyes, what are they calling an educator, right?
Right.
Like, are we pulling math teachers out
No.
of classrooms to be circle leaders?
No.
Okay, so
Absolutely
we
not.
can count our counselors, who I know are educators, I just don't know if the Illinois people know that we consider them educators. So this can be done by those people who may have time to go
The
through.
professional development.
25
correct,
hours
will be
of-
given to our Judson ISD staff. Our
Okay.
Judson ISD staff will serve as the circle leaders.
Okay,
The other part you may have noticed in here is the campus will identify students, extend an invitation,
Yep.
but it is not mandatory. So students and families would opt into those services.
okay. No, I was worried if these were teachers, what the cost was going to be for all of this training, all of these sessions. I'm seeing sub-bills racking up
Right.
like
No.
crazy, and pulling kids out of, classes and stuff too, to be able to go to it, was what was worrying me about this. So, so other than taking our counselors and social workers' time, there's no other cost hidden in here that I didn't see, right? No
There is,
cost to the district?
correct, correct. And
Okay.
I want to add just one point of clarification. This is work that counselors and social workers are already doing.
Yes.
It's just another layer of support and professional development for these guys.
Correct. They're being
Yes.
handed 16 other lessons that they can teach as part of their SEL
Yes,
curriculum
absolutely.
to a group of young men or a
Absolutely.
group of young women as part of their counseling education program, a different program. Yeah, I was just worried it was going to be teachers. So, Okay, nope, I think that was all the notes I had written down on that one. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding with Youth Guidance's Evolve program.
So a motion by Ms. Ryan and a second by Ms. Stanford. Go ahead and vote, please. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to discussion, consideration of action items. Item 6A, discussion and take possible action regarding approval of a delegate and alternate for the 2024 Texas Association of School Boards TASB Delegate Assembly. You'll remember that I volunteered and Ms. Eaton volunteered last year so that you all could have your first experience. I'm going to decline serving as the delegate this year, and so do we have a volunteer? Someone who would be the delegate and the alternate. Don't make me call you out. Yes, ma'am. I will say that there is a big benefit to going because, number one, you meet people from the region and from other regions. And number two, you get to hear the legislative agenda that that TASB will be using as they go out and talk to legislators about what we need to see in public schools. I served on the committee to help write that legislative agenda, and basically it says, give us money that you promised us. And the Texas Constitution says fully fund Texas public schools, and they're sitting on a whole bunch of money that should be coming to us. So, there are very valid reasons to go and be one of the people who vote for that. And I'm going to sit here until somebody volunteers. We're not going home.
Does it have to be decided tonight? Can it be-
Yes, because Ms. Holmes has to start registering us, and that's part of the registration.
And I've served a couple of times already, so.
I have too.
Yeah, we're trying to spread the
I've
love.
already done it 3 times.
I see Ms. Ryan and Ms. Stanford as our prime one, too.
I just want to say, tomorrow I'm registering to start another master's degree on top of my full-time job, so I will not be volunteering for this.
Well, it actually happens during the conference day, so.
It's just like, I'll be studying.
No, ma'am, it happens during TASB conference, and it's here in San Antonio this year. It's one afternoon.
Well, Ms. Canoyer, I don't want to be here all night, so I will volunteer to
Thank
move
you.
on as one of the, I guess, the delegate. And we need an alternate, right?
Yes, we do.
So I will nominate Ms. Stanford to be the alternate.
All right, so I will move that we approve Mr. Macias and Ms. Stanford as our delegate and alternate for the TASB Delegate Assembly. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Ms. Faulkner. Let's go ahead and vote, please.
Is this where you tell me you aren't going to be able to make it this?
I will be at the conference.
All right, motion passes 5-0. Item B, consider and take possible action regarding the endorsement of candidate for the TASB School Board's Board of Directors. Ms. Ginger Friesenhahn, who is currently a TASB director, is running unopposed for her position, but she still reached out, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Reached doesn't sound correct, to ask for an endorsement from us because it looks good when she's presenting her packet to everyone. So is there any discussion about this? Yes, ma'am.
There was another packet included from a Rich Senna.
Oh, Rich.
Senna, all from Bernie. He's position
I'm so sorry,
D.
that one must have come in after I
Position
saw
D, it
that.
was recent.
So he's a different position?
Correct.
Okay, so position A and position D, got it. So Mr. Senna is already in the position as well and is asking for our endorsement to continue.
So we're looking to endorse 2 people
Yes, it's 2 different positions.
and 2 different positions.
Correct.
Is the other one unopposed as well?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Oh, A and D.
Because he had a much more.
Yeah, I will say that my engagement with Ginger, she's been responsive, and she's been really effective in her leadership role there with Region 20, so, and she's in her neighboring district, she's in East Central ISD,
Correct.
so she's partly Judson.
We have a lot of their students, so yes. Any other discussion? All right, so may I have a motion, please, then?
I move that we endorse both candidates for the TASB Board of Directors.
I'll second.
So a motion by Ms. Faulkner, second by Mr. Macias. Let's go ahead and vote, please. Motion passes 5-0. Item C, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the selection of general contractor services for RFCSP 2325 District-Wide Security Fencing Project Phase 2.
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Fields.
This is simply, as we had stated earlier, Phase 2. It will consist of the remaining fencing projects that you see listed. We have a list of those schools in the back. And the key here is that Veterans Memorial High School will be taken from the 2017 funds as opposed to the 2022 funds because the funds are still available.
Is there any discussion? May I have a motion?
I move that we approve the selection of the general contractor for the RFC SP 2325 District-Wide Security Fencing Project Phase 2.
Motion by Ms. Faulkner, second by Ms. Stanford. Let's go ahead and vote, please. Motion passes 5-0. And item D, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the Cibolo Creek Middle School CPS electric line right-of-way agreement located at Wortham Oaks subdivision, Bear County. Dr. Fields.
Yes, ma'am. This is simply an agreement with CPS to tie into their network for the Middle School 6 campus. I keep saying Middle School 6, Cibolo Creek Middle School. And this is a routine procedure with construction.
Any discussion? All right, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the right-of-way agreement with CPS for the new Cibolo Creek Middle School.
Motion by Ms. Faulkner, second by Ms. Stanford. Go ahead and vote, please. Motion passes 5-0. Item E, discussion and possible action to approve school leadership staffing model ratios and/or set new Function 23 budget expenditure goals for 24-25 fiscal year. Ms. Ryan, this was your.
Okay, Dr. Fields and I talked about this yesterday. You know, the big topic for the last couple months is, you know, obviously, we're done with budget, but we're not done with budget, right? Because now we're starting work on the next budget cycle. Because, you know, we all passed a budget that we know we cannot sustain, that level of spending. You know, we've got a way to get through this year, but right now, and I think everybody kind of committed that we're going to start doing this work all year round, looking at every single efficiency we can find over the next 12 months, truly leaving no stone unturned, so that we don't have another May and June like we had last year, right? Where all of a sudden we're slashing and burning, everybody's hair is on fire, right? Like, that's not the way any of us want to operate. We want to be slow and deliberate and analytical. So if we do that over the course of a year, then it gives time to plan. It gives time to come up with different ways we can do things. So, you know, and I've already clearly stated that I was going to do, you know, my part and put as much work into this as I need to over the next year. So as I continue to pour over the financials, if I see things that maybe we can look at, then I'm going to put them on an agenda so we can look at them and analyze them. And I know you're going to be putting stuff on the agenda, and everybody in the room and everybody listening, you know, this is an all hands on deck to be looking at stuff. But I will caution and say, don't freak out, because you may see your thing on an agenda, right? Because the whole point is to look at everything, right? And just because we're looking at it doesn't mean it's getting cut, right? You look at it and sometimes you might tweak it, you might cut it, you might add to it. That's, just part of the process. So as we go through these things, I really hope the public doesn't look and, rumors start spreading, oh my gosh, we're cutting 35 principals, type thing. That's not the goal. Watch the meetings and pay attention to the conversations and know that this is, hopefully going to be a very deliberate public process that we go through. And by the time we get to next budget cycle, it's going to be a lot smoother and we'll all be smiling and it'll be a lot slower. So one of the ones I brought this month, this first one, it has to do with budget function 23, which is school leadership.
Yes, ma'am.
And the reason I brought this one is the one that has gone up some of the most over the course of 3 years. It's gone up 35%. And I think back in 21, 22, so 3 years ago, we spent about 11.2 million on this budget line. We haven't opened any new schools since then, so I tried to take it after we opened our last school, so we're comparing apples to apples. But for this fiscal year we just started, we're up to 15.1. So it's a pretty significant increase. First of all, did we figure out, were the numbers that were in the board book, were those right on the expenditures? Okay, I just want to make sure we're all working off the same data. Now, this function is primarily 61XX salaries and benefits, right? For the most part, this is mostly our principals, associate principals, assistant principals, and academic deans. Is that who falls into this budget?
Campus administration as well, front office staff. It does include the budgets, you're right. The predominant portion of it is salaries
Is
and
salaries and
benefits
benefits.
for the front office.
Oh, and it is the front office staff also?
Yes,
Okay. Oh, that's good to know.
secretary and receptionist, but it does not include the academic deans.
Okay, are they under the instructional leadership?
So
Code then?
we don't have academic deans per se in middle school. It would
But not
include the
in middle, yeah.
academic deans at the high school, but it wouldn't include the academic coaches.
Okay,
So even though they serve,
State comp ed.
okay,
that's correct.
okay.
It would not include academic coaches.
No, they would either be title funding or
Correct.
instructional leadership is where
Correct.
those guys would fall. Okay, I just want to make sure we know when we talk about this pot of money, who kind of falls into this pot of money.
Yes, ma'am.
How about admin interns? Do we know where they're billed to?
Admin
We don't have
interns,
a ton of
unless
them, I
they
know.
are specific, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Fields, may I
No,
respond?
I was just going to say primarily they're teachers.
Correct.
With additional duties.
Okay, billed still to their line 11 instruction for the most part, right?
Yes,
And they're
ma'am.
just interning, okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing anybody like out of this category that would be in there. So what I handed, I'm going to talk a little bit about ratios, and that's why I gave everybody on the dais, this is, we do ratios every year, and that's what we create the budget off of. And so in terms of our elementary, our ratios we have is one principal and one assistant principal per school, up to 950 students, which is all of our schools. And I looked around the area, and looks like that's pretty consistent with pretty much every elementary school. Even the one down the street from me has got over 1,000. They got one principal and one assistant principal. That seems pretty standard across the industry. Now, the only exception we are doing to this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Fields, if it is a LASSO grant school and they choose to use some of their grant money for an associate principal, we allow them to do that, right?
I don't think it's a choice. I think we wrote it into the LASSO
We
grant.
strongly encourage them to
I think we wrote
It's
it
a
into the
requirement.
LASSO.
really need an associate principal. Okay, and those are grant funded, and that's during their 3 years of their,
2 years.
There's only 2 more years left.
oh, correct, but if we have future, like,
Correct.
because we didn't do it that way. We paid for their first year out of general fund last year because we didn't have the grant money yet. So for like Spring Meadows, only 2 years of that's going to be charged there.
It was half a year only that we
Okay.
paid for the associate principal, and then these next 2 years will be coming out of LASSO funds.
Okay, and if we have future grants, we'll start to
Correct.
build that stuff in as our paradigm and our model. Okay, good. That would, when we're walking around elementary schools, everybody on the board should know what they should, see at each of their schools. Where I start to saw some diverging was at the middle school level. Because our ratio, right now, we go all the way up to 1,200 with one principal and 3 assistant principals. And I was looking around the area, and I know you and I talked, because we've got because some numbers have dropped at some schools, right? So you've got a lot of moving parts in terms of people and names, and we don't care about names, I only care about positions right now. Closed
Yes,
session,
ma'am.
we can talk about names, but who those are. So I know you're moving a lot of people around now. But when I started to look across some of our districts in our area, those ratios seem a little high, because right now, for example, we're giving them, when I look at Northeast ISD and I look at their middle schools that are in the 600 to 1,000 range, almost every single one of them just has 1 principal and 2 assistant principals. And I looked at some on North Side too. It's not till they hit the 900 or more mark that they add a 3rd principal. So I'm not sure how they do it, but if they can and again, this is a year of looking into everything, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because if you can find 8 extra assistant principals rolling around, that's $1 million, right? We may not have 8 of them rolling around, but if you have 4 of them rolling around, that's $500,000. Like, these are some pretty big price tag things. So if we can find some models from some other districts that have figured out some ways to run a 600 student middle school with only 1 principal, 2 assistant principals, and then, like if it's Kirby, you add the JLA assistant principal, you got an extra 1 floating around there anyway, type thing, is to try and see if we can adjust those middle school numbers a little bit. I know everybody wants more people, but at some point, something's got to give. So, and I know you talked to all the other superintendents around, the area. So if we could look into maybe trying to get those ratios down a little bit
The only
for next
school,
year.
based on what you just said, Ms. Ryan, the only school that would fall in that category, or even come close, I think they have more than 600, is Kirby. And Kirby just had the new implementation of the STEM middle school. And currently, they only have the 3 assistant principals with the written-in associate principal part of the LASSO grant. So the other middle schools,
Plus a JLA. So they
Plus
have
a
6.
JLA.
Okay, so they have.
But
6.
JLA has an administrator response. They have their own.
Correct.
Right.
So, yeah, so if Northeast was doing the same thing, they would have about 1 less person at Kirby, even with a grant, because they would have 1 principal, 2 assistant principals, add your LASSO, 1 principal, 2 assistant principals, add your LASSO and add your JLA, that would be 5, and we're going to be at 6, right? Okay.
I think what I was trying to communicate, though, is that with that particular middle school, I feel like the administrative support that we have there currently is appropriate. I think that if we were to go down, it's one of our schools that, we're paying attention to.
Yep.
To the point where we had an innovation procedure that we implemented there, and in an effort to increase academic performance. I think that if we were to go back, even 1 administrator at this point, with the implementation of all those different things, that we would be putting them at a disadvantage. And when it comes to Judson Middle, Kitty Hawk, or Metzger, or Woodlake Hills Middle, you're looking at a minimum 850 and up. So they wouldn't even be around that.
Okay, yeah, no. It would just be nice to look into, because,
Yes.
again, other districts are figuring out how to do it with less people, and something at some point has to give, right? Like, we're not going to continue to pass budgets that, it's $272 million now, and the maintenance department is already racking up bills that we're going to have to, pay. Not your fault, the air conditioner broke. They're laughing in the back. Type thing is that we're going to have to find a way to fund that, and not just reduce our $272 million budget. Now we're going to have to find ways to cover all of our unprojected expenses, because we can't go adding $10, $20 million worth of budget amendments this year. So something's going to have to give. Because at the high school level, it's looking the same way in terms of you start pulling up things like Lee, MacArthur, and Roosevelt. And you've got Lee doing it with 6 total administrators with over 2,400 students. And by our ratios, they would be authorized 8. So that's 2 more administrators we would have at a 2,400 student school than Lee High School would have. MacArthur's got 2,250, They're doing it with 5 administrators with 2,200 students, so about a Wagner-sized school. Our ratios would have it at 8. So Wagner, in theory, by ratios, would have 8 more people than MacArthur with the same amount of students. And even Roosevelt, as a big school, does it with only 7 administrators, and our ratios would give them 9. So we start to see that balloon out a little bit, how much we're different than some of our surrounding high schools. And I only picked the ones that are in our size range, because once you get to like Johnson and some of these 3,000, whatever, that's not comparable. So I tried to find ones that were similar to us. So I just think this is an area where we can try to relook some ratios, because there may be some efficiencies. And it's something I prefer we looked at early, because this is not like nobody's going out and firing an assistant principal, right? Like, this is something that as people attrit over the course of a year, then we fill vacancies and do that kind of thing. That's always the best way to realign an organization is, through attrition and naturally just kind of moving people around positions. I had a couple more notes.
I would just say, point of clarification, you're exactly right. I have no problem with looking at those ratios of what could potentially happen if we met that student load.
Yeah.
But currently, we only have 7 administrators at a Judson and a Wagner, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at a Veterans. So.
Does that
7
include the deans?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. I was counting deans and their administrators when I look at other
Yes, ma'am.
schools. So.
It does.
Yeah, no, that's great. If we're doing the 7, I think this is just an area where I think we're going to have to get a little leaner next year in order to cut a little bit of stuff. I was also wondering, we had a number of admin positions on ESSER. There were 5 assistant principals and 1 principal.
Yes, ma'am.
Did those just all move over? I looked through all my slides and stuff like that. I couldn't find did we just move all of those?
Yes, ma'am.
And those were full-time principals, or those were half-time principals? I thought they were half-time assistant principals for bigger schools. Was that how they originally?
I would ask for clarification. I think that there was a mixture, Ms. Ryan.
Okay.
When the ESSER funds were here, in an effort to, Converse was a year-round campus. So there was a portion of that campus that could be used for that innovative purpose under the ESSER funds.
Yes, and I'm tracking, instead of charging just the extra days to every single
That's
person, they
it,
stuck a couple
exactly.
people. So that one I get.
And they put the entire administrative staff. So now we bring all those people back to,
But what about, no, because we had
23.
other, who remembers the original
It was-
ESSER
we
plan?
used to
It was 4 halftime APs? Is
Yes,
that,
ma'am.
I don't remember what it was.
Originally, they were supposed to be halftime. They ended up not being halftime, and they ended
Okay.
up being full-time.
Somewhere in real
Before-
positions,
correct,
right?
before me. And
Okay,
then-
so we don't have any halftime
No, ma'am, we do not have
assistant
any
principals
halftime.
anymore. All those
No.
people moved to real positions.
Well, we just created
Whether-
an assistant principal position, like it used to be at Coronado and Ed Friends. Due to their student population, they'd share an AP, and the person would be at one campus one day, another campus another day.
Yeah.
That turned into, we need an assistant principal at Ed Friends, and we need an assistant principal at Coronado.
Okay, so all of those have moved back over. Okay, I think that was all the questions I had when I looked at 23,
Yes, ma'am.
Any other thoughts, Dr. Fields, on what we can try? I mean, 15.1, again, is a really big number. And I know, obviously, we had some pay adjustments, so there's some 505s and 509s, that got some upward pay adjustments because there were a whole bunch of assistant principals being paid pennies on the dollar, type thing. So I know part of that increase then were those salary adjustments, and some of it is bringing back of some ESSER positions. But are there any other ways we can try and, streamline this function code so we don't see that full 35% increase over 3 years?
Definitely, as we move forward, I would also ask the board to keep in mind that in fall of 2025, we're going to open up 2 new schools.
Yes,
And
that's why
they
I'm
need
worried about
principals.
this category,
Yes, ma'am.
because,
And they need assistant principals. And So we'll be bringing that on, but what we're already looking at is the majority of those students are going to move from Kitty Hawk. So we'll be able to transfer some of these assistant principals that you see at Kitty Hawk, where they have 4, not the 3. We'll be able to transfer one of those assistant principals along with, right, teachers and so on. So it's not going to be an immediate increase in all those areas.
But somewhat, but if you hire 2 more people for an elementary and 2 or 3 more and all of a sudden we're at 5 administrators, now we're talking over a $500,000 add to this line code. If you move 1, great, but then now we're still $400-some thousand over. So see why I'm a little stressed out about this category going into next year. So whatever we can do within this one, and that's all we can do is this category by category by category.
Yes, ma'am.
So, so and like Dr. Gibson was talking about, making these ratio decisions like in this January, February timeframe, and that sends us into our budget cycle. So you've got some time to think through what those ratios can look like maybe for next year, so that we agree to those prior to actually heading into the budget cycle, and Mr. Guerra's, budgeting off what we already approve as your recommended ratios.
Definitely, this is an area that we're going to look at and see if we can make some efficiencies.
Okay.
I just want to, once again, caution the board to say that we're not going to be able to solve this deficit budget off of administration. There's a bunch of places that we have to, I agree.
Everywhere.
You are bringing, this was
Everywhere.
just the first one we brought.
Yep.
I know we can't go from 0 to 30 million off of administration.
Oh,
across
gosh,
the
no.
district, so.
This
Yes,
is
ma'am.
month 1 of the new fiscal year, right?
Yes,
This
ma'am.
is the first 2 agenda items out of
There you
what'll
go.
hopefully be dozens and dozens and dozens, plus program reviews, plus budget workshops,
Yes,
plus, what are we calling the new thing we're going to do with Gibson? Strategic roundtables? That's what we call them? Okay,
Yes,
there we go. There's lots of meetings that will be on the schedule. So, we're not obviously ready for any action based on some of the data clarification I think that we did. So I don't have a motion on this one, Madam President, for tonight, even though I had put it on there for action. We've got more homework to do.
Okay. Ms. Faulkner, you're next.
Just for the record, I know for a fact, because I was an employee, Northeast, instead of having the number of assistant principals, they infuse their campuses with coordinators.
Understood.
Roosevelt has 2 SPED coordinators which are kind of the equivalent of the SPED assistant principal at Judson High School.
Understood.
So every middle school has at least 1 coordinator. Some have 1.5 and they share campuses. But every high school has at least 2. I would even go as far to say that Johnson has 3, Johnson and Reagan.
Understood. Thank you.
Ms. Stanford.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that we had passed our budget with the understanding that you would come back and be working with us on looking for ways to tweak and improve the budget situation. So I just wanted to thank you for continuing to do that. And I look at this as just a start, and I realize this won't do it all by any means. So we have to look at it in pieces, right? So I appreciate that you're going to do that.
Mr. Macias?
Ms. Ryan, I do appreciate you mentioning on the onset that this action item wasn't designed to change everything or do everything immediately. That was helpful, because some of the feedback that we were getting was, what is going on, And this is, so maybe a discussion item next time, it's not action, so people will think, hey, we're not about to do something major today. So I do also want to reiterate that we've talked about doing something early, because obviously we have an enormous discussion before we get to next June. So, Ms. Knoyer, the possibility of, I think you've mentioned some window of time that we're having meetings to discuss certain things, but maybe we have special meetings so that it's much more focused on a budget type of discussion, and that we can really have all the information that we need for that meeting. So something to consider as we go forward, because it's hard to take action here on something where we're not seeing the whole piece of the pie, right? We're only looking at one department. And then secondly, I do realize that there are a lot of benchmarks and guides for us to use. But I like what you said in our meeting, this last one, where there are similar-sized districts that would probably be the best. Now, we should look at Bear County to be competitive with salaries and things like that. But in terms of how things are staffed, you know, what are some of our districts in Texas that look the same? What and how are they staffing? And what are they going to do? Because I can tell you, everyone that put money into ESSER positions, everyone put money into ESSER. There was no model to really look at because everyone was doing the same thing. So now we're all trying to rewind things and work through it. But I think just the advent of earlier budget meetings, special meetings that might be focusing on multiple departments, one or two beforehand, and then obviously your recommendations as you and your staff work through. The other part that I want the community to be aware of is that all this is really, we're kind of running in place because we don't even know what our enrollment looks like next year. There's just so much that still needs to come in so that we can make a very informed decision on what's going to serve our community the best. So I love that we're jumping on it, but I do think it's a little early too. So anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
So what I was thinking, Dr. Fields, is perhaps we could sit down and come up with a list of topics that we want to go over and maybe schedule some of those special meetings where we can really do a deep dive into looking at things. And you and I can sit and talk about that and then have Ms. Holmes, maybe it's like, you know, a certain night every month, you know, the second Tuesday or whatever, you know, that we could count on where we have a monthly meeting to really start digging into budget things. And then we can spend more time discussing that with more data and then have more time here to
I'd love that.
discuss the other things. Does that
We'd
sound
love
good to
that.
you?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect.
Definitely.
So we'll work on that. Does that satisfy everybody? You guys like that? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, you know, if you have something specific that you want sooner, send an email. No problem. All right. So there's no action on this. So we'll move on then to our discussion items and reports. 7A, discussion on employee benefits and employee benefits administration to include initiatives, processes, and recommendations to find cost efficiencies during fiscal year 24-25. Ms. Ryan, this was your item as well.
Yes, that's my second one, because one of the other big things that came up during the budget cycle was the cost of employee benefits to the district had gone from 16% to 19%, which doesn't sound a lot, but when 90% of our expenses, our salary, all of a sudden 3% now starts turning into $5-6 million more. So, that's what, when I'm looking at the school district, I look at it like my personal finances, right? Like if I got a budget of $4,000, all of a sudden I spend $6,000 one month, the first thing I do is I go figure out what bills were more than they were supposed to be, right? So, employee benefits right now is also one of those that just has gone up a lot. So that's usually a time to, shop around and see what's going on. So there, we provide a lot of benefits to our employees, right? And some of them are subsidized by the district and other ones are just ones we go out and help make agreements on. So there's kind of two parts to this, which is the parts where we subsidize and we're eating, some of the cost, is are we getting the best price we can possibly get for the quality that we need, right? Don't always go with the lowest bidder, can't buy the cheapest car on the lot necessarily. But are there, if we're providing $10,000 in life insurance, $10,000 in life insurance is $10,000 no matter who you get it from. Are we getting the best price for $10,000 life insurance that Judson can possibly buy it out for? And I know we've followed a certain process for a while, but there's a lot of changes in the industry. Insurance and things like that change all the time, and how you can get better purchasing of those products also changes. And the other half of the coin is the stuff that we don't provide a part of, but it can have more options for our employees, like optical insurance. On this thing, we can put one optical insurance on here, but what if we had 7 different optical insurances, right? What if they had multiple options, that could get them different prices and different types of things? So, again, Laura always says we shouldn't go to conferences and meetings because we learn cool stuff and we bring it back type thing. So this was a big topic at a co-op purchasing meeting type thing, because a lot of school districts have gone to big purchasing co-ops for their benefits. And like, there's one company that services over 500 of the 1,000 districts in the state of Texas. Over half the school districts have all chosen this one purchasing co-op in order to get, the best rates and stuff like that. So again, not necessarily the direction we need to go, but when my car insurance bill comes in and it's too much, the first thing I do is I ask Laura who she's got for car insurance, and if she likes them, and then I call 2 other places and write and get quotes. So this is like the year of quotes type thing. So because I would like to make sure that we are providing the best benefits we can to our employees, right? Because that helps retain them, right? They got the best FSA's flexible spending, the best 403B, the best all these other things that they can get with Judson's help, while also still having the best medical and life insurance and the things we do provide that is still cost effective to us. So I would appreciate if we would shop around the market and see what other surrounding districts are doing and start having those conversations and see what else is out there. Doesn't mean we're going to change, but I think we owe it to the organization to at least see what our options are, and then make sure we're making a deliberate decision that is financially, best for us and best for our employees. And I know change is hard. And these things, again, there's 47 of them, so they all come up on a different rotation, right? And so figuring out a plan about if you're going to rotate from one life insurance to another, like that has to be very deliberate, right? and planned out and make sure it's seamless and all of that. And like the one company everybody uses, there's one app. Every employee benefit shows up on one app, like all my stuff. I don't have to go to, 15 different websites to figure out where my stuff is. And because so many people, it's really easy to get references from other school districts, right? Easy to call other HR directors and be like, how do your people like X, Y, or Z? And get some feedback. So when we hear about a bunch of people going a certain direction and our costs are going up, then it might be time to start, shopping a few more things around. I know, don't mess up the medical insurance because we like that right now, type thing. But, do you think it's reasonable to come back to us in, maybe about 4 months and kind of tell us what you found out about what's kind of going in the industry?
I would say based on what I was able to discern in terms of our contracts, the only 2 that came up for this year were the ones that we approved this evening. And then going forward, I think it's about 2 more years that we have with our current company that we could then go out, and every time we put out a new RFP, we do the due diligence of looking around. One of the things that I learned when I went to, I hope this makes sense, when I went to the Superintendent's Academy, is that there are over 1,000 and something districts in the state.
Yep.
There are very few with more than 10,000 students. So the majority of those districts have very few students in them, which means that they're very small districts. So you can have a company come in and say, hey, we can be a third-party administrator for very few employees. But when you've got a north side, a northeast, a Judson, or San Antonio, they usually have a department that's dedicated to getting all of that done. And it's difficult to handle that many employees, us having 4,000, with a third-party administrator. You need to have somebody in district that you can go to and get stuff done. So I think when we say over 500 districts, they're probably smaller districts throughout the city.
Well, I think the great
state.
part is one, it's really easy. You ask them for references, right? Like, give me the name of 5 districts that are our size so I can call their HR directors and check. And 2, this doesn't even have to be bid out because it's already bid out via purchasing co-op we're already part of. So the conversation is free, right? Like the conversation with them and them putting together a package, we don't even have to go out for bid because it's already been bid out.
And we can
So-
definitely
So other than a little bit of time, obviously from, Ms. Roberts having to sit down and like put together what we have so they can come up with a package. So there's some time, but at least there's no cost, there's no advertising, there's no RFPing that part out to at least see what they think they could offer, type thing.
Understood. Dr. Taggart.
Just that, we absolutely, Ms. Roberts and her team can contact and do just personal references and things like that at different districts and see what people are doing. We are under contract with our TPA right now, and we do have the option to renew. And so the things that they're able to do for us, that's what you're looking for, like to see what other things are out there. But we're very happy with their services right now, and they are providing with us options for lower costs for our employees and things like that. So to be able to look to see what other districts are doing and kind of get those reference points, I think is a good idea as we're going into this new fiscal year. But we also have to keep in mind that some of the pricing on these things are based off of claims and claim numbers. And so to be able to get more accurate quotes without doing an RFP process, we would have to provide them that information. And right now, we are actually contracted with a TPA that services us in that manner. So asking different districts for their opinions on who they use, we'll definitely look into that. I'm not sure about actually getting price quotes when we're committed to a particular company at this point.
Well, yeah, and this company is an overarching one, so they help bid out the TPA when it's time. So they're not the medical TPA, right?
We also have an insurance agent that bids out all of our services.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're getting the best deal out here, because, again, no stone left unturned, especially when prices were $6 million more in salaries and benefits than we were a year ago, going from 16 to 19%. So feels like we have to look. How do we not look? We can't just pay the bill and,
We're not suggesting that we wouldn't look, but just to address a little bit of that increase, we did increase our employer contribution
Correct.
starting in January 2024, so that's an increase. The TRS contribution rates also increase, and we've got increased workers' comp claims, which is all part of employee benefits. And so just to address the fact of the point that you were making about the increase.
Ms. Stanford?
Yep. No, I always appreciate getting more information, and if I had a bill that increased, I would go shopping for it too. But I was just going to suggest or ask if this is the type of item that would fit in the meeting we just agreed we would have? Okay. And then we can kind of add it. Okay. That would be good.
Yep. Anyone else? I know my insurance keeps going up. I'm sure everybody else's does too. That and lots of things go up. My house insurance. Whew. All right. Item 7B, attendance decrease. Ms. Stanford.
This is one of those things that came from attending a conference and getting an idea. But when I heard that our attendance. What?
I said, we're not going to let y'all go to more conferences.
I know, that's what I said, right,
Come back
Dr.
and talk.
That you're not going to want us to go anymore. When I first heard our attendance went down, my thought was, that's too bad, that's just happening to us. Attendance is happening to us. And one of the presentations I went to from Bridgeport ISD, which is small, but they gave me the realization that attendance doesn't just have to happen to you, you can take proactive measures. And that's what they did, and they did it successfully. They were able to increase their attendance, their enrollment numbers, by treating it kind of like you would a business who's going out to market a product. We are marketing our product, the product of Judson, and everything we can offer, and we consider students and their families as customers, and we have a product to offer them. And I was very encouraged by that and excited by that we don't have to just sit and go, oh, the numbers are going down. We can put together some kind of marketing plan and I can get more information on what they did. I've already reached out to them to do that. But I just wanted to put that out there as something I'd like to see us look into more. So how, could we put together some plan or way to reach out actively to our community to pull more of them in, to convince them, to sell them on Judson? So that's the concept I just wanted to present.
Thank you so much. I would just say that in terms of marketing, I could probably have Dr. Chakana speak to some of the commercials and stuff that we were playing during football games and all the other. We're trying to be as competitive as we can. We've even done some research with our demographer to see where we're losing students to around the city, whether it's IDEA or local districts or the military, and coming up with ways to market to those populations to kind of bring them back. In addition, in terms of keeping students in the district, I'm sure Dr. Gosh could speak to all of the initiatives that we put in terms of attendance. So I don't want to make it seem like we're there, because we're not. We're losing students. We need to do better. But I just want to put it out there that we have explored some of these things, and we're trying to.
Oh, yeah, and I'm just saying,
Yes, ma'am.
can we delve into it
Yes, ma'am.
more than we are now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's all I had.
Any other discussion? All right, moving on then to update on board training conferences, events, and board committee updates. I'll start over here with Mr. Macias. Did you have anything to add?
You put me on the spot.
To do that to me, so I'm,
Well, touche. No updates. Just yesterday, I was reappointed to the Mexican American School Board Association for a 2-year term. So I'm looking forward to their conference coming up in September. And also, obviously, we have TASB coming up. It's going to be a big September. But no, things have been a little light. We've been kind of busy here at home.
congratulations, sir. Ms. Faulkner, did you have anything?
Last week, it's all a blur, but I got the chance to sit in on a training with Dr. Johnson and a bunch of teachers who gave up part of their summer for your training. It was very insightful, and I enjoyed it. I didn't get to stay long, but I also had the privilege through my job to just come back today from Waco for the TAVAC conference, which is transition and job skills for secondary students. And so it was really fun and enlightening to see the connection with CTE and jobs and as a state where we are and where we need to go. And the collaboration between so many organizations was really cool to support the students in the school systems.
Thank you. Ms. Stanford?
Well, I attended SLI last month, where I got all kinds of fun ideas and exciting ideas, and so I'm not done sharing them, and we'll bring back more. And also went through strategic planning with most of us here, with Dr. Gibson, which is very encouraging, and coming up with ways to move forward in a positive light. And I also went to part of Dr. Johnson's training. And again, I just feel there's such a vibrant communication that you have with teachers, and that they feel so informed and encouraged with classroom management. I just think that's so key, is to find ways to assist teachers with feeling they have a handle on their classrooms, especially the younger ones, the newer ones. So I just hope you find a continued way to make inroads into that. Thank you.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes, between kids' doctor's appointments and moving kids around colleges and all the other mom stuff that I know Ms. Richardson is probably doing this summer too with all of our college kids. Got to attend the Jeff Strategic Planning Conference that we had. We had a great one last summer and another great one this summer with a lot of new Jeff board members. So all these great new ideas and crazy ideas and new visions mixing in with all of our old experiences. It's a great group that the Jeff has going right now and is growing. So if you're interested in serving, please reach out to Suzanne, Lexi, or I, because we're always looking for new people to come serve on the board with new great ideas. But otherwise, I am just waiting for preschool to start. One, to get rid of my kids, but two, a chance to come back and see everybody's shining faces. I love that week you're in your schools before the kids get there. That was my favorite time running around last year and just being able to have little 10-minute conversations and help you put stuff up on your bulletin boards and everything. So we can't wait for y'all who are not on contract right now to come back because it's going to be exciting beginning of the year. So get ready for the sprint, but it's going to be a fun one.
And I, too, was at the Jeff Strategic Planning, and I do want to let people know that if you don't feel like you have the time to commit to being a full Jeff board member, we do have openings for committee members to help in specific areas. So if that's something you think you might have a talent that, remembering that a lot of what we do is going towards fundraising. So we would love to see you help with events or planning the financial stuff that we do. If you're an attorney, we'd really love to have you as a consultant. And it has been a little bit of a downtime, which is good because May, June is really hectic. So I haven't been to very many events, but I do want to call everyone's attention to the block party next week and hope that you all will make an effort to come out. And I'm talking to the people in the realm out there who aren't in the room with us as well. But come and see what is being put together as an opportunity for you to have services and goods for your students and to welcome you all back for another new year. And so now we're at that time where we're going to move into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074, discussing personnel, the personnel report, and updates including new hires, resignations, and administrative appointments. 1, Director of Secondary Curriculum. And the time is 8:50, and we will be leaving. All right, we have returned from closed session. The time is 9:06. No actions were taken during closed session. And we will move to item 9, consider and take possible actions regarding items discussed in closed session. A, consider and take possible action regarding the personnel report and updates, including new hires, resignations, and administrative appointments, Director of Secondary Curriculum. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the recommendation for the Director of Secondary Curriculum
And the personnel.
and the personnel update.
So the motion is by Ms. Faulkner and second by Ms. Stanford. Let's go ahead and vote, please. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Dr. Fields, would you like to make the announcement?
The new second Director of Secondary Curriculum and Instruction will be Ms. Chanel Gomez.
Congratulations, Ms. Gomez. And there being no further business, we are adjourning at 9:07 PM. It might be a record. Thank you so much.